Good morning. Johanna, are you in the Zoom room? And if so, can you start Legistar?
Yep, I'm here and Live Manager has started.
Okay, let's see what we have. Excellent. Okay, it is running. So, Chair Sabatier, we will be ready to start on time.
And how's the mic situation? Perfect.
Okay, I'm going to mute you until 8:59.
Well, that's sad.
Okay, Chair Sabatier, we are now live, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. It is 9 o'clock in the morning. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Today is December 21st, 2021, our last regular meeting of the Lake County Board of Supervisors. And we will start this with a moment of silence before our Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a moment of silence from anybody here on the board? So since this is our last meeting of the year, I just want us to hold all the people that have suffered losses. We've had a tough year, whether it be COVID, whether it be car accidents, whether it be fires. There's been a lot of trauma this year, unfortunately, and I want to make sure that we hold all of those people that have been impacted by those losses or that trauma in our hearts and in our minds and in our prayers, and have a moment of silence for them. Supervisor Scott, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 4, are there any extra items from board members or staff? I see none. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to item number 5, the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items that board members wish to pull? I see none. I do have 2 on my list here. I'd like to pull for a quick correction, item 5.10 and also 5.21. And with that, let's open it up for the public. Any comments or anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? If you're in the Zoom room, dial *9. If you're on the phone, or else press the button at the bottom of the screen that says raise hand. Again, this is to pull an item from the consent agenda. Seeing none in the boardroom and none in the Zoom room, bringing it back to the board for action, minus 510 and 521.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve consent agenda items number 5.1 through 5.9, and then 5.11 through 5.20, and 5.22.
Second.
We have a motion from Supervisor Scott, a second by Supervisor Pyska. Johanna, good morning. Roll call, please.
Good morning, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we can go over item 5.10 real quick. It is adopt resolution approving the renewal application and certification statement for the State Department of Health Services, CMS branches Child Health and Disability Program, CHDP, Healthcare Program for Children in Foster Care Program, HCP-CFC, monitoring oversight of foster children treated with psychotropic meds or psychotropic meds, HCP-CFC PMMO, and caseload relief HCP-CFCCR grant for fiscal year, and this is where I want to change it. I believe it's supposed to be for 21-22. I need to open up the resolution, but it was different than what it says on the memo, which is 19-20.
Oh.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
21-22 is what it says on the agreement.
Jen Baker is here, our interim deputy director, who can speak to that issue.
Okay.
Hello, sir. You are correct. It should be 21-22. My apologies.
No worries at all. I think that's an easy fix. Is there any other comment on the item itself before we open it up for questions or comments from the board? Looking at CAO Hutchinson or Jennifer Baker?
Nothing
No,
further.
thank you.
Okay. Any comments or questions from board members? And opening up for the public, any comments on this item? Okay, bringing it back to the board for action. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer the resolution
With the amendment?
with the amendment of from 2019, 2020, and adding in 2021.
21-22.
21-22, I apologize.
Resolution has been offered. Johanna, roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Yes.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have approximately, I think we're right on time for public comment, yes. Let's go ahead and open up item 6.1, public input. If there is any public expression on anything not on our agenda today, you will have 3 minutes. Please raise your hand. Remember that all items on our agenda will offer public comment, and so anything related to those items, make sure to please just wait for that item to go ahead and get started. I do want to call on our CAO Hutchinson, who does have her hand up at this moment in time.
Yes, I just had a quick clarifying question on the other consent item that you pulled, number 5.21. Would you like the treasurer tax collector present for that? And if so, do you have a time approximate so I could give that office a heads up?
So I did let her know that possibly later this morning or early afternoon would be appropriate, depending on when we can fit it in. I'm guessing it will probably be early afternoon, but I told her that we would get a hold of her approximately at the time that we would bring it back up.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And so I do see we have a hand up from Carlos Bono.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is Carlos Bono. I would just like to read from a letter from Attorney Thomas Renz, and his website is renz-law.com. This letter is a letter addressing local, state, and federal authorities about the COVID-19 pandemic.
And so we do have a COVID-19 update at 9:06 a.m., so I would suggest that you wait until then to do a public comment on that.
That's fine.
Since it's related to COVID-19. Not going to shut you out. You will be able to make that comment just at the right time during the agenda item. Next hand up I see is Sean Connell. Please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Board. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Happy holidays. I'll make this short and sweet. It is the end of the year. I know that there's been a lot of investigations throughout this year into the CDD. I believe the county hired a consultant to review the efficiencies and the processes that are in there. And I know that Supervisor Simon and Heiska are both on the ad hoc. I'm just wondering when we would be getting, as the public, would be getting a readout on both what the ad hoc found as well as what the consultant found and where we'd be able to find those documents. I think it'd be very important considering that the listing for open jobs has a lot of CDD CDD openings, and I think that any new applicant should be aware of what they're walking into. With that, I wish you guys a happy holidays. Thank you for a great year. Thank you for all of your hard work from everybody from top to bottom to the lowest level employee, the janitor sweeping the hallways. We're very grateful for the fact that you guys are still at work and that we're still able to do business. So I appreciate your hard work. I'll be looking forward to those readouts, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comment. I see no further comment in the Zoom room, and if you have a comment that is not related to an item on the agenda, please come on up to the chamber microphone.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. Today is the winter solstice, shortest day of the year, and the beginning of a new cannabis cycle. A lot has happened this year in the cannabis industry. One of it is the industry has literally collapsed. At this time last year, cannabis was worth about $1,200 a pound for premium flower. Today, it's about $100 a pound. Cultivation tax the sales tax for the state on a pound of cannabis is $160. So, literally, the industry is on its knees. Cultivation tax for Lake County is going to be due here soon, and I'm here to plead for the local farmers who are literally still holding on to product from 2020. And now they're trying to sell their 2021 product, and there is no market. Literally, there is no market. I couldn't give it away. So I'm asking the Board of Supervisors to please consider either stretching out the time that the payments for this cultivation tax can be made, or eradicate it as has happened in other counties, or consider anything to help the farmer. The Lake County's come way forward with this industry, and it would be a real shame to lose 50% of your farmers in 1 year or more. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see no further hands. Oh, we do have a hand from Betsy Kahn in the Zoom room.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors and Chair. I have two things to contribute. Your previous speaker, Mr. Connell, asked about the progress on the consulting for the Community Development Department reorganization, but you have an item coming up later on in your agenda where I believe those questions should be answered. It would be item 7.8. And the second thing is that the previous speaker just now, I did not catch his name. I wonder if he could be identified, please.
Did we miss the name?
His name is Richard Durham, D-E-R-U-M.
And just to let you know, 7.8 is based on a
Thank you very much.
consulting contract with LACO, which was not the, related to the comment that was made by Sean Connell, that was with a different contractor. So that is why the comment was allowed to be made, since that is a different topic on 7.8. But thank you very much.
I'm sorry, but I believe they're related. I think that his question is quite relevant to why we are spending $440,000 a year for a 4-year contract with an outside vendor to provide planning services.
And we will have that conversation on 7.8, and
Exactly. Thank you.
thank you. And I see no further hands up, so let's go ahead and move on to our COVID-19 update, our 9:06 a.m. item. And with us today, we have Dr. Charlie Evans. Welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can. You're a little light. Not sure if Sam needs to increase the volume.
Great. I think we'll start off as we normally do with the slides on the EPI briefing from Sarah Maricos. So if we can put those up.
I believe that Mr. Rothstein has that capability and most likely has access to that.
Do you have them, Matthew?
I don't have the slides at this time.
Hang on just a second. Let me, so Charlie, I have them, but it may be from a week ago. Were there new ones yesterday?
Yeah, there were new ones yesterday. I can send them to you real quick.
Yeah, if you'll
Please.
email them to me, I'll project them. Thank you.
Okay, hang on a second. Here they come. So while those are coming up, I'll just start my my talk. Now, and before we dive into all the details we're going to talk about today, I want to talk about the big picture of where I think this is all going, and we step back and take a look at it. Now, we're 2 years into the pandemic, and everyone is completely sick of it, sick of SARS-CoV-2, sick of masks, sick of all the isolation, and we all want to return to normal. And I don't think there's anybody who feels more that way than all the healthcare workers in the county. But the stark reality is that the virus is not really letting us turn our head and look the other way. It's got other plans. We passed the 800,000 mark of deaths this last month, and that's more that were killed in all the wars of our lifetimes: World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, put together. And we must remind ourselves that so many of those people who died, loved ones that are missed to this day. There are lots of suffering going on. The estimate of 50 million infections in our country is probably an underestimate of how many people have been infected. So when you look at this and then you hear that another strain is coming, it's far more infectious, it makes us all very, very anxious. And we worry about what that will mean. And so I'll talk about what we know and what we don't know. But it looks like the slides are up, so let me go over the slides. Next slide, please.
Sure.
Next slide. So this is a very dramatic slide that I actually got last night. So this is just fresh off the press. So the orange is Delta and the purple is Omicron. And that second to last bar, the date down there is 12/11, and the last bar is 12/18. So this is weekly data taken on national surveillance to the CDC, looking at what percent of the variants, what percent of the virus are the various variants. And so you can see up and through the 4th of December, it was almost 100% Delta. And then starting in the week of December 11th, it came up to about 10% Omicron, and suddenly last week it's almost 70% Omicron. And if you break this down by region, there are regions of the country where it's over 95%. For example, up in the Northwest right now, 95% of the infections are Omicron, and that's true up in the New England area as well. And this is data that just came out yesterday. So, you know, when I saw this, I was just completely blown away by how fast Omicron is taking over Delta. So let's go to the next slide. So this is data from where we are in California, and the testing positivity increased after the Thanksgiving holiday, then decreased again. It's now back on the increase. We had daily case rate increase after Thanksgiving was up to 47%, which caused the state to go back to a mandate for masks indoors. It declined slightly to 13.1 per 100,000, but now it's back on the rise again, where our testing is 2.8% positive in the state. So let's go to the next slide. So the orange line is Lake County, the blue line is the state. So you can see right in the middle there is where Thanksgiving is. You saw that rise after Thanksgiving, then it declined, and now it's back on the rise. Hospitalizations have increased statewide from around 3,400 patients per day to 3,900 per day in the last 3 weeks. So the hospitals are starting to fill up again. Next slide. So we're learning a lot about Omicron. Actually, I think that there's more data coming in than anyone can digest, but it's doubling time. We initially thought it was in 4 days. The data is pretty clear. It doubles in 2 days. So this is very, very fast. Omicron appears to have the growth advantage over Delta, and I think by, well, if you look at it now, it's the dominant variant in the United States. By that data. And the sampling here is probably around 15% of the cases that are sent in are sampled. So, you know, I think this is accurate data. The reason Omicron appears to have a growth advantage over Delta is, one, there's some immune escape or waning immunity to vaccines. I'll talk more about that. The vaccine is still protective against Omicron, but likely not as effective, and we'll talk about that too. So next slide. So severity is something that still is not fully understood. Omicron has a similar severity as Delta, we think, but we still need more data. And even with similar severity of Delta, the concern about Omicron is its high infectivity rate and the numbers of people that will be infected because of the waning immunity and the loss of immunity from previous infection. So there's great concern about a big flood of cases. Next slide. So Omicron is displaying a reduction in immune protection, and we'll talk about that. Boosters are ineligible people significantly increase the immunity and reduce risk. So this is one of the big take-homes from the talk today, is how important boosters are for everyone. And we'll talk more about that next. So the vaccine coverage in Lake County, we have about 33% unvaccinated, 60% fully vaccinated, and 7% that are partially vaccinated. Next slide. And the age breakdown, if you look at the last bar there, the 65 plus were 76% vaccinated, which is good. There's another 7% or so that are partially vaccinated, 17.7% are unvaccinated. These are the high-risk people that are really at risk of getting sick and requiring hospitalization. The other thing on this slide, if you look at the first bar, is the children, 5 to 11-year-olds, we've only vaccinated 5%. And this is an area where we're vulnerable. Next slide. So there's more than 9,000 Lake County residents that have received a booster. In the past week, 1,000 received a booster. That's about 25% of the fully vaccinated people who have been boosted. Unfortunately, if you look at the 65 and older group, 59% of those have been boosted. Next slide. One more. So the cases were down in November compared to the 3 previous months. Cases were more likely to be younger people, 20 to 34, and then 65 plus in November than in the previous 3 months. The cases were also more likely to be white non-Hispanics in November than in the previous 3 months. And the cases were evenly distributed over the 5 supervisorial districts. Next slide. So the risk factors for the projected surge, you know, I'm sure Omicron is in Lake County. I haven't heard of an identified case, but I'm sure it's there. We have a lower daily case rate now, but the projections expect significant increases in the next several weeks. And compared to the state, Lake County is at higher risk for such a surge because of our vaccination rate is lower and because our boosted rate is lower. Next slide.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay, good. So I want to talk about what we know about Omicron and what we don't know. You know, when we look at the variants of concern, you're looking at 3 things: their transmissibility, their severity of illness, and whether they evade immunity from prior infection and from vaccines. The transmissibility news is not good. As I mentioned, it doubles in 2 days. This is highly, highly infectious. It's airborne. It's potentially 2 to 4 times as infectious as Delta, which we thought was a very highly infectious organism. This is known and proven by experience from South Africa, the Netherlands, Denmark, and England. So this is all good data. The transmissibility is no question very, very rapid. Severity of illness, as I mentioned, we still don't have enough data to say how sick one can get from the strain. The early reports from South Africa were encouraging and suggested that although it was highly infectious, people weren't getting as critically ill. Part of that is the data were skewed in that South Africa's patients that were getting sick were much younger. The experience from England suggests that you can get just as sick as you can from Delta. And there's also a suggestion that there's more hospitalization of children with the Omicron variant than with the Delta variant. This may also be because of the sheer numbers of people that are becoming infected because it's so much more infectious. With regard to the immune escape, we have significant data to suggest that if you suffered a SARS-CoV-2 infection before, you have a 3 to 8 times more likelihood of being infected with Omicron than you would with Delta. Said differently, the immunity from past infections may not protect you from Omicron infection. If you recall the mRNA vaccines, when they first came out, we touted an efficacy of 90%. Studies from Europe suggest that the efficacy rate after just 2 vaccines is maybe as low as 30% because of the waning immunity. However, if you boost, the efficacy can go up to 70%, and some people say your actual immunity can go up 25 times from boosting. That is huge information that we need to act on. The boosting is just so incredibly important with Omicron. And that should be your impetus to go out and get your booster. I think it's important to try to understand why Omicron is so different than the other SARS-CoV-2 virus variants. They did a study in Japan, and they looked at the virus when they infected the human respiratory tract. This is in culture in a lab, and it reproduced much, much faster in the bronchus than it did, than the Delta variant and other variants did. But it produced much, much slower down in the lung tissue, back down where the air is exchanged in the lung. And so the thought is that because it produces so much faster in the bronchus, which is kind of the freeway that goes into the lung, that you're shedding much more virus, and that's why it's so much more infectious. And then the fact that it doesn't reproduce so well down in the lung may explain that's why you don't get as sick with it. So, I'm an optimist. I'm really hoping that this is going to come out, that you don't get as sick with this variant as you do with the Delta. But it's just too early to tell. Looking at that slide with the purple and the yellow in the beginning, I think it's safe to say that Omicron is here. Public Health is working on testing wastewater. We'll probably start testing wastewater in Clear Lake in January, and then extend that to other population centers later in the month, so that we have a good idea of how much virus we have circulating in the community. Where are our vulnerabilities with Omicron? We saw last June that we had a rapid rise, in fact, one of the fastest in the state in terms of morbidity and mortality, because our vaccination was low in June. Our vaccination rate is now higher, but it's still not high enough to ward off a surge. Vermont, which is the most highly vaccinated state in the union, at 75%, is undergoing a surge now, and that's probably Omicron. We have plenty of people who are unvaccinated and without prior Delta infection to have a second surge in Lake County. We currently, as I mentioned, stand around 60% vaccinated, 33% no vaccination, 7% with partial vaccination. And that group over 65, there's 19% or 17% who have had no vaccination at all. So that's probably our most vulnerable spot. Boosting, we need to be more boosted. We're 25% boosted. 9,000 people have received a boost. Fortunately, 59% of those over 65 have got a boost. I mentioned too, we're lagging in our childhood immunizations. 5% of the 5 to 11-year-olds have been vaccinated. This is the group that requires supervision when they're not in school, the 5 to 11-year-olds, and oftentimes this falls to the grandparents or older people who aren't working. And this is how the infection spreads into that older group. So we really need to push to get the 5-year-olds and up vaccinated. With a variant as infectious as Omicron, it's likely that when it hits, we're going to see a vertical spike in cases, not the slow little rise that the current graph showed. No one will be immune to that spike, including teachers and healthcare workers. The staffing of schools and hospitals is going to be difficult if all those infected require 10 days of quarantine, regardless of how sick they are. I think you can all imagine, how to run a hospital when your healthcare workers are going out sick. Right now, we're having hard times staffing just because of the past crunch. So, what we can do, I can't say enough how important it is to get vaccinated. If someone in your family is not vaccinated, it's incumbent upon you to work on them to get them vaccinated. I don't think Omicron is going to let anybody who's unvaccinated avoid getting it. It's that infectious. But for those that are vaccinated, boosting, if you haven't been boosted, this is a real opportunity. I mean, you can get a 25 times increase in your immunity from that boost. And that's absolutely critical. A list of vaccination and testing sites, I think we can put that up maybe after the presentation so people know where to go, but it's http:// health.co.lake.ca.us/. So that's where all the testing sites and where the vaccination sites are, where you can go. And I might add too that flu vaccine is out there. We're seeing influenza A and influenza B, more A than B. We're also seeing RSV and common cold viruses. Now this is difficult because when people come in and they're febrile, last year we didn't see any flu. This year we're seeing it, and we don't know what is what. So getting the flu vaccine is going to help us long term in preventing us from going into overwhelm in the hospitals. So the other things that we can do, we've talked about masking, not only masking, but good masking. So the most preferable is the N95. The KN95 is second best. These are exponentially more effective than a cloth mask or a bandana. So if you can use those in this critical period where we're looking at the Omicron surge, I think you'll be safer. The other thing we're promoting is testing. Antigen tests are available in pharmacies now, and there are going to be many more available soon. And if you think about what gatherings you're having, and if there are people who are vulnerable to severe illness going to those gatherings, even if you are vaccinated, you should test before going to those gatherings, because that's going to prevent those people from getting sick. And we just need to be aware. As you hear about rising contagion and infection rates in the community, take caution to protect those at high risk. This can take many forms, from masking, testing, avoiding indoor gatherings, and anything you can do to minimize exposure. We've talked about ventilation, anything you can do to increase ventilation in your home. If you have a high-risk person in your home, getting a filtering purification system for them will also help them. I wanted to say something about the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, also known as VAERS. This came up at a prior presentation. And VAERS was raised in a prior presentation by a citizen that it's evidence that the vaccines are not safe. And so I wanted to say VAERS is a passive reporting system. Anyone can report. It relies on individuals to send in reports of their experiences to the CDC. Providers are obligated to report serious adverse reactions to VAERS. VAERS is not designed to determine if a vaccine caused a health problem, but it is especially useful for detecting unusual or unexpected patterns of adverse event reporting. Such patterns are then investigated to see if a causal relationship exists. The system has been in operation for 30 years and is our country's way of transparently collecting information that might identify a safety problem. With over 495 million vaccines administered, 495 million, very few safety problems have been identified, and the benefit of vaccines far outweighs the risks, which are minor. So although there's a lot of hype and anxiety about this new variant, we are not back to square one. I think a lot of people think, oh my God, here we go again, we're back to the beginning. And we're not. We know far more about the behavior of COVID-19 than we did 2 years ago. We're better at preventing it, we're better at treating it. And we also have new therapeutics on the horizon. The FDA has spoken about several new drugs that are likely to be released very soon through an emergency use authorization. They're very difficult to pronounce, but one is Molnupiravir, which is a Merck product. It has been shown in a phase 3 clinical trial of over 1,400 people to half the hospitalization rate and half the death rate. Very promising for people who are at high risk of severe disease. Molnupiravir is also licensed in Europe, and it's expected to be licensed here very soon. There's another medication by Pfizer, Paxlovid, if I pronounce that right, also shows high clinical promise and is coming down the pike. In addition, we have the monoclonal antibodies. Now, some of those monoclonal antibodies are not as efficacious against the Omicron as the others. We're still doing research on that, and we don't know about that, but there are some that are effective. So we do have other treatments to use for people who become infected. So in conclusion, what will this winter bring? I think the experts are drinking COVID data through a fire hose on a daily basis, and each day new light is shed upon this disease. I don't think anyone can predict where we're going and what the next few months is going to entail. I can't say with confidence that we're going to be struggling with this Omicron variant for some months to come. I think the information that I've given you today should be helpful to help you get ready to celebrate your winter holiday. Currently, we think most of the cases in Lake County are Delta. I have to rethink that looking at that first slide that we saw that I received last night. It may be that we're already having a majority of our cases be Omicron and we just don't know it. As the highly infectious Omicron variant enters the battlefield, I don't think there's any doubt that it's going to overcome the Delta variant. If Omicron is not as virulent as the Delta variant, this could be a good thing. Time will tell us. Past pandemics have burned out based on variants that were more infectious and less virulent. However, we just don't know how this will play out at this time. So I'm keeping my optimism. Until then, I think we're safest by exercising patience and doing what we know works best, which is vaccinating, boosting, masking, testing, and using common sense to keep the contagion away from us and those we love. So with that, I'd like to open it to your comments or questions.
Dr. Evans, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you to Sarah's work as well. Wondering if we can thank you very much. I was going to ask you for a clarification before opening it up for questions and comments from board members. At one point you said it's hard to diagnose between the flu or COVID. I'm guessing that means on first glance when they come into the hospital, but there is a test that can tell the difference, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, and we know, rapid testing, within an hour. But when a patient presents to a doctor's office, clinic, or ER, they can look very similar until you test them. But yes, we can determine the difference between the two.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because of the comment that you made. Thank you. So let's go ahead and open it up for any comments or questions board members may have. And I see none. I think we'd like to hear from the public. Let's go ahead and start with phone 2689.
Hello, Board of Supervisors, can you hear me?
Yes, please provide us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Christina Robertson. For months, men and women have brought data to your attention. I know you've received emails asking you to review the evidence provided concerning the dangers and fallacies around the, quote, safe and effective, unquote, vaccines. Evidence from the government's own Center for Disease Control website. You've been informed of the many reported injuries documented on the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, also on the CDC website, and of the very high survival rate, or in other words, low death rate from COVID. According to the CDC, 94.9% of COVID deaths also have serious comorbidity, such as obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and others that can be vastly improved by lifestyle changes, thus greatly lowering the chance of death from COVID. We're not seeing mandates for healthy living or organic food growing. Children are not at all at risk, and yet are being subjected to intrusion on their bodies and psychological bullying daily in their schools. This travesty is not about health care. COVID is not the killer of these poor folks who have died. serious comorbidities, inappropriate protocols, and neglect of common sense early intervention is the culprit. If there was a true pandemic, we would be seeing people on our left and on our right dropping before our eyes. You know the refusal of Pfizer to release trial data for 55 years when they were able to approve the so-called vaccine in only 108 days. You know of the censorship and the fact that 75% of ad money for mainstream network news comes directly from the pharmaceutical companies. Safe and effective? According to the New England Journal of Medicine, something around 70 to 80% of pregnant women under 20 weeks pregnant who received the vaccine have miscarriages. Young athletes have dropped dead on the sports field after vaccination. Myocarditis is a real and verifiable danger from the vaccine with a sad projected outcome within 5 years. We come here to speak to power. That's you. You are elected officials who have the power to refuse to go along with this blind, unquestioning march toward totalitarianism. So, my questions, have you looked at the reports you've been sent, the lawsuits, the vaccine injured who testified to the FDA in Washington? Have you thought about the obvious inconsistencies in logic, banning the unvaccinated and when the vaccinated can transmit? Are you aware of a healthy 12-year-old Maddie Duguay who is in a wheelchair for the rest of her life? The man who thought he was doing the best for his son and his young son died. No one should be coerced to take these vaccines.
Your 3 minutes
to
are up.
protect
If you can
others,
get to your last comment.
which it doesn't at the risk of their own life. Have you really considered the meaning of what you're doing and what you're not doing? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Carlos Bono.
Good morning. I wanted to read from a letter from rens-law.com. Mr. Renz is presenting this letter before public officials in the state and local and federal level. It says, to whom it may concern, we, the free and united people of America and the world, are writing in regards to the unlawful and corrupt actions taken by the healthcare industry, bureaucrats, and media regarding COVID-19. The actions taken for nearly 2 years now have stripped people of their rights, decimated the U.S. Constitution, violated the principles of international law embodied in the Nuremberg Code, and ignored basic and inalienable human rights. The people behind this have leveraged their privileged positions to make billions of dollars at the expense of humanity and are unwilling to allow this to continue. And we are unwilling to allow this to continue. For decades, the field of public health has researched the use of fear as a tool to manipulate people into action. The use of that tool has now been perfected and implemented against the people of the world with COVID-19. Evidence of this knowledge can be found in a CDC presentation, other DHHS materials, and in numerous academic journals. The intentional use of fear to sow hate, division, and discord is unethical, unacceptable, and must stop immediately. The reality is that COVID-19 has a 99+% recovery rate in most of the population and approximately a 94% recovery rate in the most vulnerable. Compare this to the original SARS, which had approximately a 9% case fatality rate, and the original MERS, which had over a 30% case fatality rate. We did not lock down, mask, or even widely acknowledge these diseases when they were prevalent, despite the fact that they had similar rates of spread to COVID-19. The fear has been used as a marketing tool to attempt to justify previously unthinkable actions by bureaucrats and public health officials around the world. The most egregious of which is the forced injection of gene therapy drugs into a healthy people. What happened? Gene therapy literally alters the genetic makeup of a human being and simply cannot legally, morally, or ethically be forced on anyone, ever. If the decision to alter one's own genetic makeup does not rest with the individual, there can be no argument that freedom is lost. Not only are the COVID vaccines admittedly a gene therapy, they are inarguably unsafe. The swine flu vaccine was pulled from the market after just over 20 deaths. The Chevy Volt was recently recalled over the potential for battery fires, but the Pfizer shot was given expanded authorization despite the high recovery rate from COVID-19, and the fact that Pfizer's own document submitted to the DHHS shows that over 1,200 people died in less than the first 3 months of authorization. This is nothing more than corruption. The COVID shots are also ineffective. A recent Department of Defense document stated that 71% of new cases of COVID-19 in the Medicare population are in fully vaccinated individuals, and 60% of hospitalizations are in fully vaccinated. The same document also stated that injections are even less effective in North American natives,
And your 3
Hispanics,
minutes are up. If you can get to your last comment.
Yes, I would urge the Board of Supervisors and all public officials who are elected to their offices uphold their oaths of office, uphold the Constitution, and serve the public as they were elected to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Julia Bono.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Julia Bono. I have a background and degrees in scientific research. I wanted to speak to the board and its audience today about the harms caused by the currently available COVID-19 vaccines that have been reported to the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or VAERS database, that Dr. Evans mentioned. Since many of these are severe harms associated with COVID vaccination, healthcare providers are legally required to report them, although some official estimates like the Lazarus report suggest that as few as 1% of adverse events are actually reported. The latest VAERS data through December 10th, 2021 shows there have been a total of 20,244 deaths, 106,129 hospitalizations, 106,308 urgent care visits, 151,187 doctor office visits, 8,516 anaphylaxis events, 12,127 Bell's palsy events, including a gentleman that I know personally whose face was paralyzed for 2 months after his vaccination. There's a total of 965,841 reports. Severe reported adverse events reported occurring shortly after the administration of the vaccines also include 3,297 miscarriages at a vastly higher rate among women than had previously been observed. 10,229 heart attacks, 19,039 myocarditis pericarditis events, which is especially noticeable among young people, and hence they shouldn't be vaccinated. 33,975 permanently disabled individuals, 4,807 thrombocytopenia low platelet events, 22,953 life-threatening events, 35,529 severe allergic reactions, and 11,129 shingles events. All vaccine-related deaths reported in 2020 were just 421, while this year has already seen reports of over 20,000 vaccine-related deaths, and it's not over yet. With respect to the time frame from COVID vaccination to death reported, the substantial majority of cases died within 2 days of vaccination. I also wish to testify that I personally know another individual who had a heart attack 2 days after taking the Moderna vaccine due to a blood clot in her heart that resulted in her urgent hospitalization and subsequent retirement. My emphatic contention is that these experimental COVID vaccines should not be misrepresented to the public as safe. People are taking risks, clearly, when they take these, nor should members of the public be encouraged, pressured, and or mandated to take these vaccines if they prefer not to and are understandably concerned about adverse vaccine events versus the risk of actually getting COVID, which is asymptomatic to mild in the vast majority of cases and hardly ever fatal among minors. I further contend that virtually everyone already knows that COVID vaccines exist, so if they have not taken one by this point, they probably don't want to. For those who wish to stand up for medical freedom in Lake County so that we continue to have the choice as to how we respond to our medical
finish your last comment.
They can visit the website www.standuplakecounty.org and can sign the petition to the Board of Supervisors on that site. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Phone 4627.
Good morning. This is Tom Slate. Supervisor Sabatier, first of all, thank you. I will point out that I had emailed you about a half an hour before the meeting 10 questions that I was going to bring at the meet up now, but you got back to me so quickly and answered all of them. So I was really impressed with that and very pleased, so thank you for doing that. They were COVID questions. But my comments are that we keep hearing about getting injected, you can probably, and we hear so little about there's this overwhelming amount of information about early treatment, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and others that, as far as I know, I wonder, are people getting them, or are people even being informed of that? But I'll leave it at that. That's just a comment. But so I am concerned, or my question is, how are people being treated? My understanding, and I'll say this again, these are my thoughts. People can think whatever they want. I'm not here to twist anybody's arm, but that the standard of care is remdesivir in hospitals, and if it's not, how are people being treated? What are they getting? And my concern is in remdesivir, but so I'll leave that at the question for Dr. Evans. Could you comment on that?
Thank you for your question. Dr. Evans, can you respond?
Sure. So remdesivir is the preferred treatment. Also, patients are treated with steroids to decrease their own immune reaction to the virus. A big part of the problem that comes with COVID is that our own immune systems are very reactive to the virus and respond with a flooding of fluid into the lungs that the steroids tend to help if given early enough. So people who are deficient in oxygen that require hospitalization are given those two agents when they go into the hospital. Another thing that's been very useful is proning them, which means lying on your stomach versus lying on your back. If you lie on your back, you tend to have more collapse of the lung, and the fluid tends to locate more in the posterior aspects of your lung, and you tend to go into respiratory failure faster. So spending time sleeping on your stomach is also very effective.
And if possible, related to the question, would you be able to discuss what's going on at the FDA in the looking to some of the upcoming treatments? I know Merck is working on one. I believe we've spoken about it before. Just wondering if you can provide some comments on that.
Yeah, so there's Merck is again, the names are very hard to pronounce, but it's let me get it. It's molnupiravir, which is the Merck drug, and that went through a phase 3 clinical trial. There were over 1,400 patients. It was a double-blind randomized trial with 700 or more patients in each group. And the group that got the drug had half the hospitalization rate and half the death rate. So it looks very promising. It is a nucleoside drug and shouldn't be used in pregnant women or women planning on becoming pregnant soon. That would be the main contraindication.
And then would you be able to provide some context to the monoclonal treatments? I know that they're not available everywhere, and not sure if that's due to insurance coverage or other reasons, but I know that that is something that is used in places.
Yes. So there's a number of different monoclonal antibody treatments, and these are being looked at to see how effective they are for Omicron. They were some of them were quite effective for Delta. Again, they should be given early on in the course of the disease. So if you are one of those people with comorbidities that becomes infected, that's something you should call your doctor and see if you're eligible for that treatment. And as each day goes by, we learn more about which are most effective. And again, it's the drinking from the fire hose of data that's coming out. But there are a number of different monoclonal antibody treatments out there, not all of which are readily available, but some of them are, and that's something that your primary care physician should be able to help you with.
Thank you very much for that. Let's go ahead and move on to phone 1113.
Yes, this is Dr. Will Tuttle calling, and I appreciate this discussion. I want to, again, emphasize this is a pandemic of fear. We keep hearing so much about the new variant, and we don't hear about the basic facts that the CDC keeps saying over and over again, which is, first of all, that The COVID-19 vaccine is not providing immunity. It does not eliminate the virus. It does not prevent death. It does not guarantee that you won't get it. It does not stop you from passing it on to other people. It does not eliminate mask wearing or social distancing. It does not eliminate the need for travel bans. It does not eliminate the need for business closures. It does not eliminate the need for lockdown. And now they're saying we need to have boosters for this, which will, according to the Prime Minister of New Zealand, that will never end. She just announced that recently, that boosters will be going on forever. And so it's well documented in many places, including the new book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., how the pharmaceutical industry, with its massive funding, profits and money, has captured the CDC and the NIH and NIAID and so forth, and that through that capture, also of the mainstream media, is creating a war against humanity. And I really am seriously, again, calling on the Board of Supervisors to not engage in crimes against humanity that are being inflicted upon people who are vulnerable and who are being not told the truth about the medications, so-called medications, that they're being pressured into having. This is directly against the Nuremberg principles that we've been hearing. We're not learning about the tremendously effective responses that people have had with ivermectin and with hydroxychloroquine and with budesonide and so forth. That's been deliberately covered up. We have massive censorship happening on social media and in the mainstream media. And as you know very well, if there's censorship going on, they're not censoring lies, they're censoring the truth. It's always liars who want to censor, right? There's a great saying by St. Augustine, that truth is like a lion. Just let it be free and it can defend itself. So if we let the truth defend itself, then why do we have to have all this censorship of alternative views? There's been so many doctors and researchers, hundreds of thousands of them now, have signed documents saying that we're not dealing with this properly, that it's a hoax, and it's leading directly to the loss of our basic freedoms, which is much more of a serious problem than a health problem. Losing our basic freedoms and our basic rights, we won't pass on to future generations the cherished liberties that we have. So we are seeing a tremendous amount of violence being inflicted upon children, especially through not only these vaccines, which has been pointed out are
and your
very
3
harmful
minutes
to
are
them.
up. If you can get your last comment.
And well, I just want to say that we should really question the mask wearing. And I'll just say, even according to the New England Journal of Medicine, quote, we know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. So from many areas, we see that this approach is not working except to take away our freedoms and create huge profits for these industries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to speak real quick on this idea of fear-mongering. I thought that Dr. Evans' information was very not fear-mongering. He was optimistic. He was letting us know that things do seem like they could be better than dealing with the Delta. There's the potential that it might be equal, but again, sharing optimism and moving forward. Nobody has talked about, and in my opinion, will probably not be talking about lockdowns. Masks are not 100%, but they help. They at least reduce the potential. Weird that a mask works in healthcare but doesn't work outside of healthcare. I'm trying to figure out the logic on that one. And the fear-mongering, but yet bringing out the Nazi Nuremberg trial and the loss of freedoms, I'm wondering which side the fear-mongering is also coming from. I get it that, yes, maybe actions taken during the pandemic may not have been the correct, appropriate action. I think people were trying to do the best to save lives. And I think those things can be debatable, but some of these comments are ludicrous, continue to come to our board, and the data that you're using is not reliable data. And if, in fact, thank you for the book from Robert F. Kennedy. That is the most fear-mongering book I've ever seen in my life. So please, I want to have a conversation. This is not dialogue in the way that we're being approached. Approach us outside of the meeting and have a conversation, because this is not a way to move forward. Thank you. And with that, looks like we're done with public comment. We have public comment in the board chambers, so let's go ahead. And did you have something to say, Supervisor Scott? Or? Okay.
John Moss. I read Robert Kennedy's book. I do not think it is fear-mongering. I think it is well documented. Everything he says has the person and the place and the article to refer to. I want to ask Dr. Evans, do you happen to know the number of Lake County people who have come down with cancer since they have been vaccinated? Can you find that out for us? Thank you.
All right, thank you for that comment slash question. We do have a comment from Supervisor Pyska.
Dr. Evans, thank you for your report today. It's wonderful to see you again, even though these are, it's a difficult conversation. We're all tired, as you mentioned. This is not the place that we thought that we would be in. We don't know what's going to happen. I appreciate your optimism, but I want to remember the 115 people that have died in Lake County and the 900,000 people that have died around our country and the healthcare workers that have left their professions this year. I had a really dear friend of mine who had to walk away from her job at Adventist because she couldn't, she said she got into this profession to help people, but all she was doing was putting her patients in body bags, and that was in October. So we don't know what's going to happen over the next few weeks and few months, but we do know our healthcare workers are going to stand their ground as best they can and do everything in their power to protect us and help us through whatever may happen. And I want to just send them our best wishes, remember them in our hearts, and the families that are suffering. This has been a very, very difficult time, and it's not over, and we have to continue to dig deep and have patience.
Thank you for your comment. Any further comments from the board? Also closed public comment, so bringing it back for any further comments. Dr. Evans, thank you very much for your time today and your update, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the next year. And hopefully things will continue to go as good as they are right now, because our numbers are looking good. I know that I've been looking at them and comparing it to some of the other areas that were doing well, such as San Francisco and Marin, and we are definitely, as far as the numbers go, coming out of our state Department of Public Health, we are definitely looking good in comparison to the rest of the state of California at this moment, and I hope that we can remain that way.
I do too. I do too. And thanks for all the work you guys do on this.
Yep. Happy holidays. Okay, and then it is 10:04, and we will move on to our 10 a.m. item. Public hearing for Greg Hansen General Plan Amendment. Do we need to take a break to get all of our staff here? And it looks like I'm getting a yes from a supervisor anyway, so let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break, set up for our public hearing, make sure everybody is here and ready to go. And we will start again at, let's do a 6-minute break, 10:10.
Think about it. I will. I was thinking about it last night.
I know that sometimes I gotta just kind of put them out a little bit further on the tip of the nose, but not everybody has a huge nose like I do, so. Yeah. Definitely a downfall of the
Okay,
mask.
Chair.
Thank you,
Five.
Bruno.
Yesterday was so busy with
What did I do this time?
Our long agenda.
Oh, that.
I'm sure it can go back to being my fault.
Did you notice it wasn't all my name on the sponsors of these items?
You allowed it, because you're chair. It's the last week to be blamed for it.
All right, we are a little bit behind schedule. It is 10:13, but we're going to go ahead and reconvene our meeting. This is our 10 a.m. item, public hearing for Greg Hansen General Plan Amendment, GPAP 20-02, rezone RZ 20-02, an initial study IS 20-91. I need to check with Anita, public hearing. Do we need swearing in for this?
Not for this type of hearing,
That's
but
what I
thank
thought.
you for asking.
It's a rezone. It's not an appeal or anything like that. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to get started with community development with introducing the subject matter.
Good morning, Board Commissioners. So today's agenda, we're just going to go over the following. Oh, I am Satir Ham, the Assistant Planner for Community Development Department, and we are going to go over the agenda list with the list of topics and findings for the project.
And whoever has access to the mouse, you might be able to move that so you can have it not block your writing, the little screen in the top right corner. Hopefully that'll be, that's perfect.
Okay. So the applicant is requesting an approval for a general plan amendment of APN 008-03817 and 008-03844 from agriculture to industrial for approximately plus minus 7 acres, an area that fronts Big Valley Road. All other areas of the project parcel will remain designated as agriculture. And the details are on this slide. Additionally, no current agriculture activity will be impacted or removed. And this is actually previously it is one legal lot, and it was previously merged. Okay. For the record, the applicant owner is Greg Hansen, and the property is located at 3555 and 3445 Big Valley Road, Kelseyville, California, 95451. Okay, the applicant is requesting approval for a rezone of the same amount on the same area from agriculture to M2, heavy industrial. So it's also shown in here. So it's consistent with the general plan change to. The overview of the proposed area is shown in light blue. The portion within the light blue would be rezoned to M2 and will remain consistent with the surrounding area with an opportunity for economic development. However, future development have not been proposed. To the left is a vacant parcel, is the parcel that's being rezoned, and it is vacant, currently vacant, and they are not producing or doing any agriculture production. To the right is the parcel across the street, zoned as M2. The rezone complies with the general plan for economic development. However, no development proposed at this moment. The opportunity for one is available. The rezone area is surrounded by agriculture. and commercial development, and it would be consistent with the surrounding area. The rezone complies with the minimum lot size and requirement of the proposed zoning. The proposed rezone would require a general plan amendment in compliance with the Lake County zoning ordinance. The applicant has proposed all information required in Article 47 to process the rezone. The applicant has submitted all the required information for the rezone application with the approval of the requested entitlements. The proposed rezone complies with the general plan, Kelseyville area plan, and zoning ordinance. The rezone would allow mixed-use development to provide economic opportunity for agriculture and commercial use. The initial study found that the rezone and the general plan amendment would not have any impact on the environment, as no development is proposed at this time. However, SECO requires analysis of all reasonably foreseeable development or project component that may occur on site in the future. Therefore, potential development of the parcel was analyzed at a general level, and it is determined that future development would not have any potential impact on the environment as the area requesting the land designation change. Any future development proposed would have to go through the Community Development Department, and further CEQA environmental analysis would need to be conducted. So there were a few public comments and concerns involving converting agriculture to commercial use. However, the applicant does not propose any development in the near future, instead to add value to the property as commercial use. The Planning Commissioner recommends the following to adopt a negative declaration due to no development proposed and no mitigation measures found. Approve the general plan amendment and the rezone because it is consistent with the general plan and the Kelseyville area plan. There will be no change in the project, which would not create new significant environmental impact nor result in any significant adverse environmental impact.
Okay, thank you very much.
That'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much. Can we get the lights on? Thank you. Any questions or comments, or would you guys like to hear from the applicant before we go ahead and do that? I'm getting a lot of nods, so Mr. Hansen, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, and I'm not going to limit you to 3 minutes since you are the applicant here. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning.
1 second, sir.
Can you hear me okay?
Not until Sam gets back to his booth behind the curtain. Go for it.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Hansen. I'm the son of Greg Hansen, the applicant. I'll be representing the family today. This idea began years ago when we started a conversation with Rick Connell, which eventually turned into Bob Massarelli and Mike Lynn, and so on and so forth. But the underlying theme there, excuse me, is everybody agreed that this was a good idea and should happen. Rick actually had grander plans, but we've come to this. Then about a year ago, the project came to fruition when we decided to apply for the general plan amendment rezone, as the emerging regulations and restrictions on ag uses in the area, particularly with this parcel, were identified within the community growth boundary, and was understandable. The county had to take a line and draw some lines, and this was it. We were actually in agreement with that. That being said, one thing leads to another. In the communications with the Ag Commissioner's office after that, the property was actually referred to as a casualty of war, again, which we were in agreement with. In that, they were just inferring that they had to draw a hard line, essentially, on where to put setbacks and draw lines. This made the property impossible to develop into an ag use that was both beneficial economically to the county and to our family. So here we are. Since the beginning of the project, understandably, there's been some bumps in the road and multiple delays with staffing. I know the department has had their issues. I think we're on Satura, I think is our third planner, which I want to take a second and just acknowledge her because she's done such a great job taking this over. It wasn't hers to begin with. She picked it up maybe midway. So an oftentimes thankless job. I just want to take a second and say thank you, Satir, for your hard work. This project was presented and reviewed before the Planning Commission in accordance with all federal, state, and local agencies' requirements with no appeals. Following the hearing, the commissioners ultimately approved the project by recommending approval to the board, which is why we're here today. I'm hoping we can move forward as recommended by PC, and I thank you for your time. And if there's any questions I can field or any questions people have, I'd be happy to answer. I'd just like to add, that was my sort of canned response so that my nerves didn't get the best of me. But I think the most important thing about this project is it has the community support. After countless conversations with members of the community, we are a deep part of the community, our family, us too. But with conversations with members of the KBA, I think this is family, friends, a lot of people that actually live and work in the area. Everybody seems to be in agreement that this is a good idea and a good stimulation for our area. The county even had the foresight to put public works. I don't know if it showed up in the photo, but there's a fire hydrant all the way, with a water main line all the way to the end of the property, which is just kitty corner from the county Department of Transportation yard. So I think there was obviously some foresight there. Someone had the idea that this was eventually going to happen and grow through this community growth boundary. One of my favorite quotes from one of the commissioners during the PC was, if we're going to be about community development and economic progress, then this is the type of project that we should probably be moving forward on. It was added that, sorry if you can't understand me through the mask, but it was added that the commissioners are often approached with questions about why are there no properties like this? Why is there no commercial zoning? Or why is there, they're constantly fielding questions from public or people that were wanting to come in the area looking for opportunities such as this. So that was duly noted. Again, thank you for your time, and that's all I have for you today.
Okay, thank you very much. I would say that you can go ahead and take a seat, and if we do have questions for you, we'll go ahead and call on you. Any comments or questions from supervisors? Supervisor Scott?
No question. It's just a comment that I definitely support this general plan amendment, and I really hope that we're able to move forward with it.
Any other comments or questions? Supervisor Crandall?
Yes, I'd echo what Supervisor Scott had said, and thank you for bringing it to the finish line.
I did have a question. Well, number one, it makes perfect sense. It's right next door to industrial anyways. Right now, it's not being utilized as ag. It makes sense visually when you start looking at it from a zoning ordinance perspective, what zones are where, or zoning map perspective. It does not look like we're piecemealing and just spot mapping this new zone change here. So I think it makes perfect sense. There was a comment that you made, I just want a clarification, that there was still a need for an initial study to review potential projects.
If there is future developments to occur in the future, the applicant haven't proposed any development yet, but for any projects or any development, it would have to go through CEQA.
Right.
But we can't impose that kind of force development if there is no development proposed.
That would be a very weird place to live. I don't know if that would be still the United States of America. But yes, definitely the CEQA process for whatever development comes in the future. I just thought I heard that even in the initial study, they need to kind of look at what potential projects, because within the initial study, it's basically saying that it's the right place for that type of zone to be, but it doesn't go into the details. I don't know how you can get into the details without just fabricating projects that may or may never ever happen. So I just wanted to make sure that the initial study itself is following the rules and guidelines of what we needed to do in order to accomplish this, with the recognition that a more in-depth CEQA analysis would be done for whatever development may come in the future.
Oh, is it?
It was a statement / question. I just wanted to make sure. And so the answer is yes, that is the case. Okay. Now, I want to thank you for your patience. My heart kept dropping as you kept saying the names of people that you've worked with. Glad and thankful that we're here today and that we're able to get those things accomplished, and hoping that in the near future that there may be the potential for some development there. And so I believe that there's no further comments, and so looking for action.
Public.
Oh. I had heard from Mr. Hansen, and I skipped that part. Any member of the public wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand if you're in the Zoom room, or come on up to the microphone if you're in the board chambers. Thank you, guys.
No problem. Keep you on your toes.
And it looks like there's no hands in the Zoom room and no one stepping up to the mic in the board chambers. So looking for action.
Wait, I just want to make a comment.
Oh.
Well, I look forward to whatever the development project might be. I think this is a great step forward in how Kelseyville is going to be growing, and I think it's a project that's going to be really important for the community.
Thank you for that, and I believe there's a couple of things to be done.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'll start, I guess. I move that the Board of Supervisors find that the General Plan Amendment, GPAP 2002, and the rezone RZ 20-02 applied for by Greg Hansen will not have a significant effect on the environment, and therefore a negative declaration shall be adopted with the findings outlined in the staff report dated May 27th, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion from Supervisor Scott, second by Supervisor Pyska. Roll call, please, Johanna.
Okay, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Scott?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then for the General Plan Amendment, I offer the resolution.
Resolution's been offered by Supervisor Scott. Johanna, roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Scott?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Thank you.
And for the rezone, I move that the reading of the ordinance be waived and title only be read.
Second.
And we have a motion from Supervisor Scott and a second by Supervisor Pyska. Roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall?
Aye.
Supervisor Scott?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye. And if we can get that title.
If anyone has it present, can they read for me?
Mr. Chair,
Please.
an ordinance amending section 21-3.7 of chapter 21 of the Ordinance Code of the County of Lake by adopting a sectional district map, zoning map, number 3.7B1, period, and then a blank. That's the title.
Okay. I thought that we were looking for something to fill the blank, so. And that is the title. Thank you very much. And then
I offer the ordinance.
the ordinance has been offered by Supervisor Scott. Roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Scott?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye. I'm going to check, even though I didn't get looked at. We didn't need a second on the offering of the ordinance.
No, this was a zoning ordinance pursuant to a public hearing,
Yep, just wanted to make sure.
always.
Redos can be troublesome sometimes. Thank you all, thank you both, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
And so with that, we're still right on time, it would seem. We are going to our 10:30 a.m. item, consideration of resolutions supporting community development department and processing commercial cannabis permits while ensuring appropriate environmental protection to our communities. So I brought you this item today, have been in communication with both CAO Hutchinson and Director Darby about some of the projects that we've been seeing coming to us as a Board of Supervisors, which typically it goes to the Planning Commission, but we've been seeing a lot of them here. And there's a lot of time that is taken up when it comes to an appeal process. I won't speak to the exact amount of time, but I know in speaking with CAO Hutchinson, it was quite time consuming for her staff, and I'm sure for Director Darby's as well. And I think that some of them, there has been some calls, whether correctly called for or not, for environmental impact reports to be looked at. An environmental impact report is a more in-depth, much more participation from the public is involved in those types of processes. And while the resolution itself, and I'll say this in a way that kind of really demeans my resolution, doesn't do anything. All it does is provide support for the community development with the laws that are already set in place by California CEQA processes that we have constantly and continuously talked about. For example, we're going to be talking about LACO later on. We want to move more efficiently through the processes. And while that's possible, I want to make sure that we are sharing public support that some projects may need to take the longer route, and we are in full support of them doing so. That we are not looking for efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. There's ways to do both. It's not a binary thing where it's either efficient or protection of the environment. There is ways to make it both happen. And I just wanted to make sure to put that support out verbally, that if through discretionary review of the zoning administrator, there's a decision to go through an EIR, that we are in 100% full support of that process being taken. It is not up to us to make that decision. That is up to our CDD. And again, in speaking with Director Darby, she liked the idea of bringing this resolution to the board. And so here it is in front of you, simply stating that we support the discretion of the Community Development Department to choose the path for best environmental protection for the projects that are in front of them. Supervisor Pyska.
How does this resolution change in any way how we already operate?
Like I said, it does not, other than sharing our support to make sure that we are not pressuring them in a way by speaking about efficiencies that is not pressuring them in any way to make a different decision. And I do not believe that those decisions have been made based on pressure, but we have seen some of these things come to us, and in my mind, we're getting closer to our communities. How can we mitigate to less than significant odor as we get closer to communities for an agricultural crop that is not a right to farm crop? And outdoor, if it was indoor, absolutely it can be mitigated. And outdoor, I think it becomes more difficult. Some of them are perfectly isolated and perfectly surrounded by places that would allow those things to happen without those types of issues. But others, not so much. And I will not be stating which ones I believe should be moving in those directions, but I want to make sure to share my support if the need to move in that direction is done. Because of, again, of the comments of how long it takes to go through the process.
And it's not that I disagree with the resolution. I'm just wondering kind of why. I mean, wouldn't we just give board direction to do this? Like, it just seems like an extra step that's not necessary. But again, it's not that I disagree with the point.
And I don't know how to respond to that other than the response that I already gave. Ms. Graham.
I would say that a resolution is simply a statement of policy or determination of your board. Here, and I will also say that in my review, I was very cautious because there's nothing presently in the applicable ordinances that provide tools for this, though certainly that can be addressed in that manner. But your board sits in a quasi-judicial capacity when you consider many land use appeals. You cannot therefore make decisions in advance as to appropriate level of environmental review for all projects, because that's part of what your board often considers, not always, but often considers in these cases. And it was my suggestion to include the CEQA guidelines because, quite frankly, I think people forget that those bind community development and they also bind your board in terms of how these things gel out. Whether this is necessary, no. I think what the Supervisor Sabatier was attempting to do here was, as he said, was just to let the department know that your board doesn't have any expectations that a swift environmental review will always be necessary in order to encourage efficiencies in the department. And that's what it does in Supervisor Sabatier. I apologize in advance if I've overstepped.
Now, I will add something to that it's also to state it to the public. That way it's understood that we support this, and that way if there are questions, well, it's their discretion and we support what direction they are going to be taking. So it was a bit of a way also to buffer our community development from potential frustrations if applicants find themselves falling into the EIR process. We are in full support of it, and again, the discretion is fully and entirely within the hands of community development. Supervisor Scott?
I'm going to be a little honest here. I was a little thrown back when I saw this item put on the agenda and put on by Supervisor Sabatier, because for efficiency purposes, we have a committee that's supposed to be working with community development. And I was just kind of concerned that this wasn't brought from the committee.
And I have no way of communicating to the committee without breaching the Brown Act. And in my opinion, had conversations with both CAO Hutchinson and with Director Darby, feel that I still have the ability to bring something that I might be concerned about that might not be something that is being discussed within the CDD, and I don't want to drop my concerns solely because the CDD committee should be the sole group to focus on concerns. So and again, not changing any law, not changing anything at all, so I felt that it was not a inappropriate item to put on the agenda.
I don't know, I guess I just look at it as efficiency, and we have these different committees that we're supposed to sit on, and it just seems inefficient when there's overlap. That's my only comment. I was just kind of thrown back when I saw this.
Okay. Supervisor Crandall?
I actually appreciate this, and the reason I state that is because in my town councils, this is brought up quite frequently, even though it's like we said, it doesn't necessarily do anything except for give the public a chance to know that this is what we support. In their mind, they kind of have this thought process that we're telling the CDD department to push everything and don't look at anything environmental or how the public sees it. This gives them a chance to know that we aren't saying that, and also gives direction with this ordinance to kind of just restate it, or resolution, I'm sorry, the resolution, and that's kind of what a resolution like Anita had mentioned, it's what it kind of does, just explains it again so we can kind of highlight that for the public to know. It gives me a chance to refer them to this meeting and time frame, and hopefully that helps with some of the dialogue in some of my town halls. So I didn't know it was coming till this week, and I'm glad it's here. It helps for me, so I support it.
Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, it was a little interesting too when I saw it on the agenda as we move forward. Obviously, the CDD committee, we're doing good work. Obviously, the board has asked for an update, and we're planning on giving one in January as we move forward. We want to make sure that we're always supporting our new community development director, Mary, as she moves forward with the challenges in the county. So, I don't disagree. I just, I hope that the board, when we set up these committees and we do that we're going to do the work, and we're going to keep doing the work to bring it back to the board to get hopefully the answers as we move forward. And I'm hoping the other board members do that. If there's a concern that, things aren't happening quick enough or other stuff, then when we do our committee assignments, that's when we need to have a conversation. like you said, you weren't able to communicate with CDD committee, so let's have a conversation in January 4th on what committees are out there and who's on those, so we can have these things, so that we're always working, the best that we can together on moving forward with projects as they're coming back to the full board. But nothing in this ultimate support for our community development is a goal that we want to get to, and make sure that we're all working in the same direction on that. So we'll see after the discussion. I would like to also hear from Mary on the resolution as we move forward. So
Thank you very much. Supervisor Crandall?
Just real quick, for me, it kind of also makes me think of AB 52 and some of those type of laws that aren't, sometimes are either overlooked or not thought out in some of the projects because of the past differentiation of people leaving and coming back. And so since we have a new director in place with lots of new staff possibly coming in and whatnot, getting us all on the same page really helps for systemic progress in that department. So that's why I think it helps.
Thank you. Director Darby?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today, and thank you so much for the initiation of this proposed resolution that's before you. When I was approached about this particular resolution, I was supportive of it because there are a lot of projects that I have that are in the queue that require a lot of environmental review, and because of that environmental review, it holds up the projects. And so I thought that this was an excellent idea to receive support by the board so that applicants or the community would know that CDD is not the reason that these projects are being withheld or held up, but that we had statutes and guidelines that we have to follow with CEQA, and sometimes those guidelines or regulations may require a mitigated negative declaration or EIR, or maybe sometimes we have accepted projects that didn't receive the correct environmental review, and so that is a little disheartening to a lot of our community or applicants, and so I thought this would be a great idea to just kind of reiterate the process that we have to undergo when we're reviewing these projects. So thank you for bringing it before the board, and I hope you consider it.
Thank you for your comment. And if there's no further comments, let's go ahead and go to public. Betsy Kahn.
Thank you very much. I would like to suggest that if you want to clarify the agreement that you are all documenting in this resolution, that you should, that the committee, the ad hoc committee, and the staff of the Community Development Department should consider revising Article 64 of the zoning ordinances. The second half of their two items in Article 64, one of them refers to the use of an internal Lake County environmental guideline, which is clearly outdated. It was created in the 70s, right after CEQA came into existence. It was revised in the 80s. My inquiries recently of staff at the CDD indicates that it's no longer in use. It's quite conflicting with your purpose that you're stating today in this resolution, and I would really urge you to just replace that Article 64 item B with the statement that all of the procedures used by the Community Development Department are aligned with the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, period. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and I think that was heard by the CDD committee in case they wish to discuss that. And seeing no one in the board chambers and no other hands in the Zoom room, let's bring it back to the board for action or further deliberation.
Mr. Chair, I'll motion to adopt resolution supporting Community Development Department in processing commercial cannabis permits while ensuring appropriate environmental protection to our communities. And did they want to make these corrections, or the board, the ones that were offered by? Betsy?
No, that
Well,
would be,
state
that would
law,
be a different,
state law automatically trumps the Article 64, and it wouldn't be in here.
Yeah.
My clarification was, so you're offering the ordinance,
Oh.
or the resolution then, rather.
What am I thinking? I offer the resolution.
Resolution has
Sorry.
been, no worries. Resolution has been offered by Supervisor Crandall.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And something weird is happening today. We're right on time on every single one of these items. 10, I shouldn't have said that. I'm so sorry.
It's like
But just so everybody look at
saying
me.
you have a no-hitter in the sixth.
So we're going to move on to our 6.5, 10:45 a.m. item, discussion consideration of making public works and water resources separate standalone departments. CAO Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agendized this item for you, given the fact that we are anticipating a considerable amount of infrastructure funding coming to us in the coming year or two. And so this discussion is brought forward to enable your board to consider whether it would make sense to have these two departments, Water Resources and Public Works, be separate, thus enabling Public Works to focus on the multitude of projects that they will probably face by this funding availability. And while there is no recommendation in this memo, it's really an opportunity for you to have that discussion. I did include the history because this is a topic that has been discussed a number of times by your board, and the two departments have been combined and separated several times in recent years. They are presently combined. And so if your board has interest in moving towards separating them again, then I'll bring Stephen Carter into the conversation as well, and we can talk about options you would have for position allocations. And based on the direction, we would come back to you on a future agenda date with the actual changes to your position allocation. The staffing levels as they are at present would require some changes to both departments. So that's really the sum total of my presentation at this point. I see the Public Works Water Resources Director has his camera on, so I think he probably wants to comment now.
And just want to check with the board, you guys okay with Public Works Director and Water Resource Director starting before our comments?
Yes.
Okay. Director De Leon.
Well, good morning. I don't really have a whole lot of comments other than I'm certainly here to answer any questions. I'll I guess share my opinion. I appreciate the discussion. However, we've got a pretty good team up here, and we have a system in place. Water Resources is certainly covered with DPW admin and our function to provide them all the accounting and clerical and other administrative duties and handling them without any trouble. You know, the federal funding opportunities are certainly welcomed, and you know, it's a top priority for me, and I'm working pretty collaboratively with our consultant with the APC and our consultant that is performing our 5-year rehab plan and others. So including our administrative office, who's been working with our congressman on developing projects for specific funding. So I personally, I feel like we're in good shape. I feel like we're able to handle the workload and really would not like to see the disruption from the separation of the departments. And you know, we're still trying to fill positions here with DPW and just completed a recruitment that the assistant director that unfortunately the individual who would have been very, very good declined our offer. So we're going to go back out and continue with that. And I'd like to see our efforts on really focusing on filling positions instead of separating. So that's my opinion. Again, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director De Leon. Any comments or questions from board members? Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation today. As we all know, we sat here today, obviously, in a drought emergency, and these things are going to be coming up as we go. We are all being inundated by questions on water basins, throughout the county, and constant conversations about that with climate change and other things being addressed. I think we need to look at water resources as a standalone department, because it's going to come with some serious challenges over the next decade and the things that we're going to be asked to do here locally. Looking at a long-term sustainable water resiliency program in Lake County, and looking at the growth and the opportunities down the road. We already know that water is gold. Water is something that we really need to take into consideration, and I think having this department for water resources, I think we have done a great job of filling those positions with some really young, enthusiastic, educated folks that will really thrive, I think, if we give them the opportunity to move forward with that. In consideration of the public works and our roads, since we've come on, this is a major focus, I know, of this board as we move forward, to make sure that we're in a position in the Public Works Department to take full advantage of any infrastructure dollars to help fix the roads here in Lake County. When we talk about economic development, that is a big part of it. You can't put a beautiful business at the end of a road that is not in disrepair. And as you know, I think unless it's changed, and you can correct me, Scott, I think our road index was at like 37, and I could be too high on that number out of 100. And it's going to take a lot of work to even get us to 50% out of 100 over the next decade as we try and do this. And being focused for both those departments on major issues coming down over the next decade, both climate change for water resources, and then infrastructure needs for economic development for our road development here in Lake County are big. And I think having two separate directors, just really concentrating on those directives that will be coming from the board and from our communities as we move forward are important. I know there's a lot of work. I know this has gone back and forth in discussions, but keeping up with climate change is really important. And we're seeing it in our forests. We're seeing it in the weather patterns that we're having and the challenges we're meeting and moving forward with right now. And I think having focused departments is really important there. So from my point of view, those are my comments. I know there'll be a lot of discussion as we go forward. So,
Supervisor Pyska?
I appreciate your comments. Those are really strong points, and we are looking at how we adapt for sustainability and get to the point where we can thrive through climate change. So we're faced with a lot right now. One of my big questions was, though, do we have an understanding on what type of funding we're going to be seeing through the infrastructure bill? Because I think, that's a big part of this too, is what is the workload that we're looking at, and how are we going to ramp up that capacity?
And we don't yet. Counties, smaller jurisdictions have not been advised what funding amounts or for types of projects will be coming. Just that there is a lot coming, at least with the legislation that is still in the works. We know about the ARPA funds, which you're talking about later today. But for the big infrastructure money that is reportedly coming, we have no specifics yet.
Right. There are definitely specifics within the bill, but no knowledge of what we might be receiving, what portion of the pie. Supervisor Crandall?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I appreciate the timeline that was included, because I remember when David Cowan had left, I think we had a lot of high hopes with David Cowan. He started right when we started, or he started like the summer before 2019. And then all of a sudden he just said he had to go. And so our choice was Scott DeLeon, because of his knowledge with water resources and his experience. And it eventually became where we're in a situation where we always needed a director, and it just kept going. So I feel, I appreciate the work that he's done with us, and it's his knowledge that's really kept us going there, and I think a lot of the employees really work well in that department because of his leadership. And I know that we're looking to probably focus more on the roads but because of his knowledge and his expertise, I think that's going to do a lot of good with what's coming down the pipe with ARPA funds. And so, yeah, I just wanted to highlight that.
Or with infrastructure funds.
Right, or, yeah, there you go.
Too many funds.
Too many funds, man, sorry.
Supervisor Scott?
Well, I think this is the first time in Lake County that we've, having the issue of having money and making sure that we have the people in place to be able to spend it. Usually we're scrambling, trying to figure out where's the money going to come from to fix the situations that we have. I know we don't have an idea of how much money we're going to be getting, but do we have kind of a date of when this money might start coming in so we can make sure that we're ahead of the game? Because I think for us, we're always behind, and I think this is a great time to look at these two departments and make sure that they are appropriately running to be able to run with it. When we do get the funding, we know funding is coming to be able to work on the projects that are at hand, because we all receive phone calls, probably weekly, regarding our roads. And so those are incredibly important, not just for the people that live here, but for the people that visit here. So I think it's incredibly important to make sure that we are ready when those funds come in.
And I would suspect that a minimum of probably 6 months before we get the criterias of what the money can be used for. It's going to take time for the bureaucratic process to decide how much is going where, and then what's the criteria to access the funds. I think we, no matter what the timeline is, just need to have some shovel-ready projects, and I think it's about getting the designs done first and foremost, and then figuring out which ones meet the criteria that now has been finalized over at the federal side. But I don't think anybody can provide any specific timeline, but it's going to take time. And we know that it takes time, but it's about being prepared ahead of time. I do know that we have submitted for a 5-year plan to be done, and I think that was some of the work that Director De Leon was speaking of. And I think that off of that plan is where we really need to start getting serious about getting those designs prepared, putting in our own 2 cents as to which ones we think need to be in the priority list when we bring it to the public and discuss what that 5-year plan look like. I think the 5-year plan will be a very technical plan based on what they see on the data and the cost and the level of need for each road. But then we'll be able to know and understand the needs of the community, maybe more so than the data can show that kind of level of knowledge. And so I think between the data and our input, that we will get to a good 5-year plan, and from there, that's where we really just need to hit the road running and get those designs done, so we can literally pull it off the shelf when money is made available, whether it's through the infrastructure bill or other ways, because we are still receiving SB1 funds, we are still receiving HUDA funds, and each one of those has specific criteria of how it can or can't be used. For example, HUDA funds can't be used on residential roads. Which is a huge problem because that's where there's the most need. And so hopefully this infrastructure bill will not be about collector streets or arterial streets, and really about communities, because I really believe that's where we need it the most. So it's a wait and see process for what that will look like. I do know that I was here, as Supervisor Crandall mentioned, when the departments were split. I appreciate the forward progress that I've seen happening at our water resources. We had a FEMA flood zone issue that has been is in a much better position today than it was when it was its own department. We were not getting any movement whatsoever on the Middle Creek Restoration Project, which is exactly why Supervisor Crandall and I got together and decided to make the committee with the approval of the board. There's been some great movement there, including an extension of our funds coming from the state and some acquisition of properties that's happening, with also some very good conversations to get support from our federal and state representatives for that. In my opinion, there's been some greater progress in the combining than there was before. So in my opinion, the reason it's gone back and forth is it's not always showed us that it's, because the person at the helm makes a huge difference, and obviously we weren't getting the exact outcomes that we were looking for, so we ended up combining. And so I think that with the 5-year plan coming down the pike, with the fact that the money is not here right now, and even if the money was here, we need this 5-year plan to really kind of help us guide towards what projects need to be done, and then provide guidance to our department with expectations of a certain amount of things getting done, and I'm not going to venture to say exactly what that certain amount of things looks like today, that I think that's the way we need to move right now, rather than making a decision with so much unknowns as to what the future brings. I know that it is a daunting task, and it's also been a dismal task in seeing our roads moving forward, but at the same time, we've also received very little amount of funds to truly help and make that change happen. I know, for example, Director De Leon and I, right when I started back in 2019, had a discussion of how are we going to create enough money to double or at least 50% more of the amount of taxes that we're receiving to get our roads done, because the way the state's paying us, it's just not enough to be able to get things done. There's a difference between doing a chip seal to just cover up the mess versus doing a complete road rehab, which some of these roads really do need. So I don't mind the conversation, but I think that it's a little premature. I think we need a little bit more data in front of us, a little bit more information. And I think that waiting for that 5-year plan and setting some expectations will let us know, do these expectations go above and beyond the capability of a department head to be successful with 2 departments under their wings, or is it possible for that department head to be successful with the expectations we're placing as is? And I think that the conversation is just premature at this moment in time. Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, just as we're talking passionately about the roads, is we know what's coming. Climate change is here. It is happening. So the expansion of our water resources, understanding what our groundwater basins are in Lake County, our aquifers for the entire county, and looking at how we're going to be moving forward to address this and be prepared as we move forward for the next, 7 generations here in Lake County. Water has always been here, but understanding where it is, especially for the folks in the southern end of the county that are on aquifers, not off of the lake, and understanding, what those growth opportunities are for us over the next, like I said, 20 years, and understanding that. And I think whether funding's coming or not, this is an issue we're going to be dealing with, and I think the best department and an opportunity to move forward with that is water resources, and making sure that we have a director and the staff there to help us concentrate solely on those issues that are coming up. So whether we deal with it now or later, I think we're going to be continuing these conversations, but the focus on that obviously is 2 big infrastructure opportunities and long-term resilience opportunities. One for the roads, which we've been dealing with since I've been on the board. We have kind of focused. I'm glad we got the 5-year plan going, but we need to be doing that in the Water Resources Department, looking at everything that we're dealing with right now, with the new ag industry coming in, long-term development, folks from outside of the county trying to take dams down, all these different things that are happening as we move forward. So that's where the conversation comes from my point of view. I do appreciate Scott De Leon and the Public Works Department being over water resources, but I also know just in the last couple of years, the folks that we put in there in the Public Works Department are passionate, they're educated, they do a great job moving forward, and so that's where my conversation comes from.
I did omit a comment that now I remember I wanted to make, and Director De Leon pointed out the fact that he's done a couple recruits and has not come to fruition with the expectations of landing somebody in the vacancy. I think that right there is important no matter what decision is made for both of those departments. I think that having a full staff is what's really going to help ensure that we can get these projects done, no matter, again, if it's under one department or with two departments under his wings. And so I'd like to ask if it's possible to offer creative ways or the next level of recruiting to make sure that we can fill those positions, because I think that's one of the things, no matter what happens, we need to fill those positions. And it's not on today's agenda, but kind of looking at a direction to staff maybe or something like that.
It's within the director's purview to take on creative recruitment strategies. He can absolutely do that. He can look into an executive recruiting firm if he wishes, or he can ask HR to do a more amplified, broader recruitment, advertising in sources that are applicable to his work. I don't know that we require board action for that, because it's something we do regularly when we have particular challenges. As far as a executive recruiter, of course, if the cost was at a certain level, it would require board approval, but generally for a singular recruitment, it does not.
Okay, and the reason I was looking in your direction is because of HR, but I will turn my attention over to Director De Leon, and please utilize whatever is available to you, because I think filling those positions is one of the key ingredients to being successful in this infrastructure program that's coming up.
And I absolutely have and will continue to do that. The most recent recruitment, we were hopeful that with the recent changes in compensation that was approved by your board, that we would see increased interest, and we did. We've done recruitments where we didn't get any applicants, and the most recent one, we had 2 applicants. One of them was very good, and it was very disappointing that he chose not to accept the offer. But we view that as a positive. There's folks looking at Lake County, and we're going to continue to do that. And I will work with HR on our next recruitment to expand that. I will tell you that we advertised our last recruitment through SEAC, American Public Works Association, and other statewide agencies that folks in the industry could see that recruitment. So, but we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Supervisor Scott?
I just want to add that the board's already taken action to put strategies in place to help fill these positions. So, make sure we're looking at that with, sign-on bonuses and other things that are available.
Right.
And we made sure that he was aware of the signing bonus and moving expense reimbursement, and I worked closely with Pam to put together the best offer we could make, and we'll continue to work together to do that.
Thank you. Any further comments? Supervisor Crandall?
Yeah, just to highlight as well, I remember in August when we made the decision, just another thing I remembered that was stated was that even when Mr. Cowan was present, he was referring quite frequently to Director De Leon for information. And that's why also when he left, we were able to hit the ground running with that visit from Gary Mendy at the Middle Creek Restoration. He already knew kind of a lot about it. So I don't know if that's going to work out for, any type of, whoever takes over the position, if we, split these departments apart. How are we going to work that out to make sure or ensure that moves forward as well? I just want to ensure that takes place, if that makes any sense, because I think we kind of went with Mr. Cowan. He came in and we had to kind of get him up to par. So,
and I think that's up to us to make sure and set the expectations, no matter what decision is made and no matter what happens, to make sure that there's continuity and that there's expectations that are set, so that we make sure that we continue to be successful. That's how I would respond to that.
Okay.
Any further comments before I open it up for the public? Okay, let's go ahead and open it up for the public. We have a hand up in the Zoom room, Betsy Kahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 comments to contribute to this discussion. I have been involved as a volunteer for the Clean Water Program in the County of Lake since 2009. I've worked with the Department of Public Works, Community Development Department, Department of Water Resources, and some of the subject matter that's involved with the absent subject that is not addressed here, which is the Watershed Protection District. I've seen the impacts to the department over time, where Mr. De Leon originally had the entire responsibility for the Department of Public Works. Then it became his job to do that separately for 25% of his time. Then the department was reintegrated into Public Works and so forth. This back and forth, I believe, is disruptive in general, especially when the director currently says we're working on this very well. And I have seen such an incredible amount of support coming from the Department of Public Works for our current Department of Water Resources. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Before you make this decision to just split the departments, that you should allow the director currently to work on that 5-year plan, make a continued effort to recruit for that Deputy Public Works Director, and advise you as to what needs to be done, rather than you deciding on the basis of, this, again, the big dollar signs come in, and then you guys all, decide something has to be done about those big dollar signs. I think Mr. De Leon's done an excellent job, and you should just let him make those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I see no further hands up in the Zoom room and hands up in the boardroom. Please come up to the microphone.
Joan Moss, I'm very interested in Mr. De Leon and his good relationship with his road crew personally, but I want to know what the difference is between a department head and a commissioner. Last week I heard him called a commissioner. I want to know what the difference is and what that means.
You're speaking of a road commissioner, and Director De Leon, you may be able to summarize road commissioner better than myself.
Is he still a department head?
Yes. He is both positions. I believe the state law requires that we have a road commissioner, and as Director of Public Works, I don't know if it's automatic or if we have placed him in that position of being road commissioner as well. Again, Director De Leon, you know better than I do.
Well, you actually hit it on the head. As Public Works Director, I'm also the road commissioner for the county. So it's a function of the Streets and Highways Code, and it just kind of comes with the position.
Thank you very much. And no further public comment, bringing it back to the board.
This was for direction only, correct?
I believe so.
Mr. Chair, is it correct to assume there is no direction at this time?
Yes, the recommended action was direction to staff or no direction at all, and looking to see if there's other comments before I make my comment.
I think I've made my comments, and where I was coming from as far as clear. I felt like this was a conversation. I'm in agreement with the conversation in separating departments, but I haven't heard a consensus in that manner, so.
Might be good to put it in a motion since we don't seem to have consensus.
I'd like to have some more discussions.
And I'll just state my last comment, just to reiterate in a brief summary. I'd like to wait for the 5-year plan and set expectations, and then based on those expectations and the potential knowledge of the infrastructure bill and things coming down the pike, that would give us a better position to make a decision versus now with so many unknowns.
That's where I'm at too. I want to see the reality of the work that, or the opportunity of the work that we're going to be able to accomplish, and I think we'll be in a better position to further this discussion and make decisions at that point.
And so I think we need to hear from others.
Yeah, I'm on the same page.
So we have 3 who agree, and that would be consensus.
Mr. Chair, may I ask, what is the timeline for completion of the 5-year
I
plan?
believe it was a 6-week, 10-week process that we signed with the company, and I believe by February or something like that, they were supposed to be done. I see Director De Leon is agreeing.
Yes, it was time in February. I don't have the date yet, but we'll be bringing that to your board in the month of February with their the conclusion of their plan and a summary of that plan.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for the discussion, and that will go ahead and close out this item. Do we have, I don't see her on here, so I'm just going to keep going. We have item 7.2. Let's go ahead and take that on. I see that we do have Craig Weatherby in our attendees. Is it possible to move Craig Weatherby over to panelists?
It's in progress.
And it looks like he just popped in. So 7.2 is consideration of ordinance, amending the micro home kitchen operation ordinance. As you know, I believe it was back on December 15th is when we finalized the second reading of the ordinance in 2020. We started out in January with a pilot program with up to a maximum of 10 total permits. AB 626, just as a brief summary, is a bill that was passed through our legislature that allowed home kitchens to be used commercially. So you didn't need to have a commercial hood, a commercial fridge, or any type of commercial equipment, but you were greatly limited in what you can do. You were limited in what you can cook. So for example, no shellfish, things like that, no raw milk. And you were limited on the amount of money you can make and the number of meals you can serve on a, I believe it was weekly basis. So if you sold all of them within a matter of 2 days, your week would be over. We opened it up so that there was a maximum of 2 applications per district, just to kind of spread it out and see how it worked. And I do know I'm going to steal a little tiny bit of Mr. Weatherby's thunder here. There was a lot of reluctance. It was bad timing in the sense that we were heavy involved with COVID-19 at the time. Our public health department, which environmental health is a part of, were highly involved in what was going on with COVID-19. But one of the reasons that Supervisor Crandall and myself brought it to the attention of the board was the fact that our restaurants were struggling. Was there another way to try and provide some help? Or, on the reverse, is there a way for us to provide a new, almost like a gig economy type of job here in the County of Lake while dealing with COVID-19? The pilot program was based off of that reluctance so that we can make sure that it would have very little impact on the departments as we move forward. We knew there was going to be some learning processes. I will apologize for the length of time it's taken to bring this back. We had anticipated to do a review after 6 months. As you can see, we doubled that. We're now in December instead of July reviewing this. But so far, the program has been successful. And I will let Mr. Weatherby provide some information since he's had some firsthand contact with the applicants and seen how this program has worked.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Board. The program was generally very successful. The implementation was indeed very rough to begin with. We had an exceptionally high interest in the program. We took about 30 to 40 calls within 3 days of putting this program in place. However, the program, as AB 626 kind of was written out, proved to become somewhat restrictive, and a lot of people kind of opted not to move forward due to the restrictions. However, for the 5 people who did move on to permit, they were able to, for the first time ever, operate a home kitchen and sell their food legally to the community, and it has had mixed benefit to them. A couple of them are really enjoying it. Some have decided that they're going to try something different. But ultimately, this was an opportunity to give people a chance. And it has ultimately been a very successful endeavor as it relates to those folks who chose to use it. Moving on to a permanent program, opening it up for more opportunities for people, we're actually kind of encouraged for that. The need to make this decision is driven by the fact that we're still in trial program, which means that we are still honoring the permits that were issued under the trial program. However, we cannot issue any new permits until the program is finalized one way or the other. And so there's a lot of folks who are waiting for that. I also would like to point out we do have a significant uptick in illegal vending from home. We're seeing that on Facebook, we're seeing it on Instagram. And this is a tool that we can use to help these folks, create a business opportunity for themselves and start, doing something with their passion. And hopefully it leads to them moving on to a restaurant in the future if this proves to be something they enjoy. So.
Thank you very much. I was very pleased with the words that I heard from Mr. Weatherby when we first started reviewing the program, that it went from kind of nervous about it to absolutely happy to see, especially his comments on seeing people's homes, which is where I think the majority of the anxiety came from when discussing the program. There was nothing but positive words about what he saw and how clean their kitchens were. It was actually a very positive experience that he related back to us in our meetings together. So I appreciate that people are trying to do the program, and I think that right now we are looking at expanding it from a pilot program to something more permanent. Within that permanent, we are still limiting the number of licenses, and that's to ensure that it's working correctly, and looking at an annual review this time rather than 6 months, and just to see how it's going. Doesn't have to be anything intense from a staff perspective, but we're looking at a maximum of 20 licenses now, and instead of splitting that evenly by district, since some districts did not have any licenses, we're looking at saying a maximum of 10 in a single district to just try to limit it of how many people are doing it, to try to minimize the potential adverse impacts from having too many. Also, we're reviewing the cost of getting the permits and getting the plan checks done now that we've learned how many hours it actually takes to go through that process. And I really appreciate the educational opportunity and the informational opportunity that our environmental health staff have provided to the applicants. I think that's been very useful, and I know that I received that from Mr. Weatherby as well, which makes it easier then for the annual permit to be renewed in the future as long as there's no major changes. One of the things that we missed that I made sure to kind of rectify was that in AB 626, it does allow for in-home consumption, or on-site consumption, I'm sorry, is the actual thing, or on-site pickup. We're not allowed to change AB 626. It's either we say yes or no. However, we do have some authority in the sense that we don't want to create a mess in a residential area. And so everyone, both city jurisdictions and the county, have parking ordinances. And you need to have an approval that your parking ordinance will actually allow these things to happen. The majority will most likely not be able to do in-home consumption because of the parking situation. But everyone has been doing delivery, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Weatherby, but everyone has been doing delivery. No one has been doing on-site consumption at this moment in time.
I have not been made aware of any of the permitted facilities actually doing in-home.
Yeah.
Just that it remains an option under 626.
And so we wanted to make sure that there has to be a potential for a minor use permit if you're going to be doing that. CDD is made aware. I sat down with Director Darby about it. I sat down with both cities, and for both cities it states, and I believe it stated this before, you have to have a business license. We don't do that here in the county. And for both cities and the county, you need to get approval from the CDD or the planning department of each jurisdiction to make sure that you can do an on-site consumption or pickup, just to make sure that we're following the rules and not creating anything that shouldn't happen. But overall, so far, the program has created positive outcomes, and I hope that it continues. And my last one also is we did limit it for time from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Because we don't want people doing pickups or on-site consumption in a residential area all the way through 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever might happen. So we wanted to make sure and limit that as well. And so those are all the changes that are being offered, and I do apologize. I know that I've been working with Supervisor Crandall. His name never made it on the sponsor of this. He has been involved in every single one of our meetings. I tried adding it at the last second and resubmitted it, but it never made it on the agenda, so I apologize, and I'd love to offer you some time to share some words.
No, I know that initially, and I think it was right at the beginning of COVID, we were talking about this, and there were so many people that wanted to do it because of that situation. Interestingly enough, many of the people that came and spoke didn't even put in for a license. But either way, what I did appreciate was the fact that we are one of the trailblazers in it with Riverside County, San Mateo, and other cities, and we were even in different organizational meetings to talk about our experiences with it as well. Craig has been wonderful in this. He's I really appreciate a lot of the work he's put into this, his can-do attitude, and his putting us in a position to understand about what about environmental health we didn't understand, the time frame and the intricacies that it takes to get things done, and some of the things we were proposing weren't going to fit in with that. So kudos to him on that. So thank you.
And just to jump off of your comment of trailblazing, I know that Mr. Weatherby has been contacted by multiple counties throughout the state of California asking, how is this working? Because I think they shared the same anxiety that we shared about, is this really the program that we want to start and look into? But he's been fielding those phone calls, and it's kind of nice when Lake County gets asked, how do you do something, rather than the reverse. And so I believe, last comment, I did get a phone call from a city council member in the city of Lakeport during a Day of the Dead festival. One of the permit holders had a booth over at the event, spoke to that council member about that's how they got their business started, and that's how they were able to do the things they do. I believe it's the ones that do the lumpia. I got a phone call from that council member being thankful that we have this program to allow for these types of businesses to start. I see it as a sort of incubator type of program with the hope, as Mr. Weatherby stated, to eventually either get to a food truck or get to a restaurant. So again, that is the ordinance in front of you to amend the original ordinance with the changes that I've gone ahead and stated. Any comments? Supervisor Scott.
I do have a couple questions. So can you elaborate on some of the businesses that have been permitted? What kind of foods are they selling? Are they hot foods? Are they wedding cakes? What are they doing? And has anybody been able to move forward and move to a storefront?
So I'll take the second part first. I'm not aware of anybody who has moved on to move to a storefront or a mobile truck or vehicle of that nature as of yet. I can confirm that at least one of the permitted folks was originally an illegal food vendor, and this program has given them an opportunity to do their stuff legally. And so that's, we do know about that particular one. I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part of your question?
What kind of foods are they preparing and having delivered?
So this is the interesting part about 626 is some of the restrictions that are placed on it. All of their food must be prepared on the same day. So that excludes things like barbecue that need to be marinated overnight or things like that. So we had a lot of folks who wanted to do those types of foods, but ultimately they couldn't do it because they couldn't do prep the day before. So that was a restriction that proved to be a problem for some folks. However, we're seeing a pretty incredible variety of menus. We're seeing some stuff on the high-end scale. We're seeing lamb chops, being served with stuff that I can't pronounce. some incredible chef kind of opportunities. We're also seeing hot dogs. We're seeing lumpia. We're seeing some ethnic foods that are coming out. It's actually been a very wide variety.
And I would have to say it's probably pretty difficult to create foods that do not have any prepare time the day before. I mean, just the chopping and preparing and getting things together. So having to do all that in one day seems kind of difficult.
And I think it's to limit the potential for foodborne diseases because of the fact that they do not have a commercial kitchen or refrigerator or things like that. Any further comments or questions before we open it up for the public? Oh,
Just a simple question. If I got it right, do we have 5 current licenses at this point?
That is correct. 5 permits have been issued, and we took in 12 applications.
Excellent. My question would be, what districts? Do you know what districts they're in?
I do have that information off the top of my head. Surprisingly, City of Clear Lake had 0. I want to say your district had 2. Supervisor Crandall's district had 2, and Supervisor Peiska's district had 1.
Excellent. Thank you. Good array across the county then. Excellent.
And I'm still working on the City of Clear Lake 1.
We were very surprised by that. That was where the most interest came from in the initial calls, but then we ultimately had 0 applicants and 0 permitted. We're a little baffled by that, honestly.
We'll see what we can do. And I know that Chef Robert from Woodland Community College was involved in our original conversations, and he was interested, but I know that life happened, and hopefully he'll be submitting an application in the near future as well, which would add another one in your district, Supervisor Peiska. Supervisor Scott?
Oh, no.
Oh, never mind. All right, if there's no further comments, then let's go ahead and open it up for the public. I see we have a comment from Kevin Ingram.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Spatier and honorable board members. This is Kevin Ingram, City Manager with the City of Lakeport. I want to note the City of Lakeport's support of the microhome kitchen operation ordinance. I'll freely admit that I was skeptical of this ordinance at first. AB 626 is kind of a strange setup. It provides for, in its founding documents by the state legislature, that on the surface kind of would allow the county health department to usurp some of our local zoning controls. However, with great compliments to both Supervisor Sabatier and Mr. Weatherby with Environmental Health, the proposed Lake County ordinance is crafted in a way where local review is maintained. This is a good ordinance that not only maintains and balances our ability to make sure that our neighborhoods remain safe and enjoyable for everybody in them, but also provides that economic development opportunity for small restaurateurs and food service providers to break into the marketplace with kind of reduced capital and overhead costs. This will provide a wonderful stepping stone and opportunity for small food service providers to grow in our communities, kind of I think what Supervisor Scott was alluding to. I think the ultimate idea is to allow them to start in these small setups, but eventually get them into our downtown areas and helping fill some of those storefronts and stuff, kind of meeting that economic development demand. So thank you, and I would encourage your board to move forward with this ordinance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ingram. And I see no further hands up in the Zoom room and no hands up in the boardroom. And let's bring it back for action.
Mr. Chair, I offer the amending ordinance. No?
This ordinance will require the standard 2 readings, so first there would be the motion to waive reading of the ordinance and have it read in title only. And then if that is approved, the second motion is to advance it to the next available hearing date. Well, 5 days, so in this case, the next available hearing date.
So, Mr. Chair, I motion to waive initial reading and read in title only.
We have a
Second.
motion from Supervisor Crandall. I didn't wait for it, I apologize. And a second from Supervisor Peiska. Roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Scott?
Aye.
Supervisor Peiska?
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
And should I read it? I can read it. An ordinance amending ordinance number, do you have the number?
Oh.
It's 3099.
3099 of the County of Lake Code regulating microenterprise home kitchen operations and incorporating by reference health and safety code sections 113789, 113825, 114367, 114367.1 through 114367.6, and 114390.
And then, perfect. And then the next would be the motion to advance reading of the ordinance to January 4th.
So moved.
2022.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion from Supervisor Crandall, a second by Supervisor Scott. Roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye. And Johanna, thank you for saving us with having the ordinance number on hand.
And so now,
And we have a hand up from CAO Hutchinson.
When you're complete with this item, I wanted to check in with you on timing, so.
Okay,
Sorry,
I think we are done with this item.
Okay, so you've got a number of additional untimed items, and as you recall, I have the time constraint coming up. I'll need to be out of this meeting from approximately 12:20 for about 40 minutes. I'm speaking to a civic group in Clear Lake. So I don't know what your plans are at this point in terms of lunch, but my recommendation would be that if you are taking a lunch break, that maybe we take up item 7.3 after the lunch break so that I can participate in it fully and perhaps take up some of the other agenda items which may not require as much time as 7.3 before that.
So my plan, and let me know if this works time-wise, because you are doing Zoom. You're not booking it down to Clear Lake
Correct, I'm
Rotary,
doing
right?
Zoom.
Is 12:15 okay, 12:10?
12:20, as long as I
No, I think 12:20 sounds a
jump
little
out
too
of one
close.
Zoom and get into another, yes.
And my guess is that we could probably get through the ARPA conversation
to try?
between now and 12:15, and I'd like to just keep going down.
Okay.
Let's give it a shot. But thank you for the reminder. I do need that reminder from time to time. So we're going to move on to item 7.3 and see how we do. Consideration of Recovery and Revitalization Plan for Lake County and American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Spending Priorities Statement. CAO Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Deputy CAO Matthew Rothstein and I are going to present this item together. And then we also look forward to the comments from you and Supervisor Pyska, who both served on the committee with us that helped to develop this plan. As your board is aware, thanks to the tireless work of our extraordinary federal legislative representatives and others, Lake County has been allocated over $12.5 million in state and local fiscal recovery funds as a result of the passage of what you've heard referred to as the ARPA plan. That stands for American Rescue Plan Act. These funds can be used for numerous qualifying purposes, such as overcoming negative economic impacts resulting from the COVID pandemic. They can be used to support the recovery and revitalization of hard-hit communities. They can be used to fund public health expenditures associated with pandemic response, and as well for investing in water and sewer infrastructure. This really represents a major significant turning point for Lake County to have this opportunity. So the ad hoc committee, which I mentioned before, included Chairman Sabatier, Supervisor Pyska, myself, a number of department heads and county administrative and finance staff, and over a several-month period undertook the extensive process to identify needs appropriately matched to the funding allocations I just reviewed. And every county department head was granted an opportunity to weigh in on the needs they viewed as qualifying for the use of these funds, and they also shared their priorities with us. So the committee members agreed in general that spending should be intended to have a transformative effect on Lake County communities, and that should be our primary area of emphasis, since it's such an extraordinary opportunity to have this amount of funding, and that we should also look to prepare our local government organization to more flexibly and efficiently serve the public for the years to come. So for the priorities that we're going to outline here, we anticipate at this point that they will take all of the funding, 12.5 million and change. And unfortunately, not all of the needs identified can be met. But we do anticipate that this plan that we hope you will adopt today is really a starting point to get ourselves started. And we would anticipate being back before your board at various future intervals to make adjustments, because not all of the areas that we're going to review with you are fully fleshed out. It's going to take more work to determine how much funding is needed in certain areas. So you will see actual expenditures begin to come forward in your various budget approval processes, some of them possibly as early as mid-year budget, which you will take up in February 2022. So we're very excited to present this plan and look forward to your statements. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Carol. It is my privilege to introduce the first 3 of 4 categories of action that drive these recommended American Rescue Plan Act spending priorities.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
Can you make that a little bit bigger for those in the Zoom room to be able to see?
Sure.
And Sam, can we make sure his volume is sufficient? It seemed a little low.
And the size is perfect.
And I can also speak up a bit.
Thank you, Matthew.
So first, we commit to promoting recovery and revitalization in Lake County by building sustainable communities through housing and long-term planning. A $3.8 million investment is recommended in this category, serving the following Vision 2028 principles: continue rebuilding in all efforts to recover from our recent disasters and grow our economy and spur creation of quality local jobs. Priorities in this category of action include comprehensive housing strategic planning, enhancing support for housing priorities, promoting development of our construction trades workforce, and strengthening community partnerships to meet housing and related needs. So why these priorities? Every Lake County resident should have access to safe and affordable housing that provides a quality environment conducive to maximizing their ability to contribute to their community. Too often, we've taken a piecemeal approach rather than zooming out, systematically identifying our needs, and moving forward in a strategic manner. ARPA funding will help us end this cycle and target investments to add housing supply and rehabilitate existing homes. Secondly, we commit to promoting recovery and revitalization in Lake County by removing barriers to childhood success and dignified aging. A $2.33 million investment is recommended in this category, serving these Vision 2028 principles. Invest in Lake County's richest resource, our people. Enhance public safety and promote the well-being of every Lake County resident. Priorities in this category of action include solidifying our senior centers for decades to come, strengthening services for children 5 and under, making library services even more accessible, filling service gaps in communities that don't currently have a library branch, ensuring COVID-19 testing and vaccination availability in Lake County, and applying lessons of this pandemic to build a more resilient future. By supporting these priorities, we recognize that well-being is not something that we develop once and then have forever. It is a constant effort that requires services and supports at different stages of life. ARPA has given us an opportunity to help our children and elders recover from the disruptions of COVID-19 and thrive in new norms brought by rapid social change since 2020. Thirdly, we commit to promoting recovery and revitalization in Lake County by acting now on water and sewer infrastructure projects.
Matthew,
A $3 million investment is recommended in this category based on the following Vision 2028 principle: improve our infrastructure. The priority in this category of action is completing a small number of qualifying infrastructure projects. The American Rescue Plan Act allows funding to be used for water and sewer infrastructure, and acting now on a few small infrastructure projects can make a positive difference without overburdening Lake County's ratepayers. For your awareness, Board, Scott Harder, our Special Districts Administrator, is here to answer your board's questions on water and sewer infrastructure projects following this presentation. And now Carol Hutchinson will present our fourth category of action. We commit to promoting recovery and revitalization in Lake County by preparing to effectively meet emergent public needs.
Thank you, Matthew. I didn't mean to talk over you there for a moment, but I wanted to ask you to advance the sheet there. Thank you so much. Okay. Could you back up and show the one you just reviewed too, because we couldn't see that during your review, in case anyone would like to see that. What he just spoke of in number 3, it's sort of split between this page and the next page. So if you can scroll down just a little bit more. Thank you, Matthew. Okay. And so certainly last but not least at this point, how do we tune up the engine and become better able to meet the needs of the public? Clearly the public needs more from us than we have historically been able to deliver. And so what is recommended here in terms of priorities is continuing the modernization of customer service in a variety of ways, enhancing and hardening our information technology infrastructure, making public facilities more hospitable, and stabilizing our pension contribution costs. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is that we have to be open to new ways of doing business, developing the capacity to flexibly respond, quickly reform practices, and provide the best possible level of service, despite whatever barriers may come, is a modern imperative. Technological threats are more numerous than ever, for example, and can threaten our business continuity if we are not sufficiently proactive. Institutional knowledge, understanding, and experience are also key to meeting emergent needs in our present environment. We need a workforce that is stable, nimble, and has the tools to adapt. Utilizing ARPA funding to support these critical areas of priority will help us to be more effective now and in the future. And back to you, Matthew.
Thank you very much, Carol. Staff recommends that your board approve this ARPA spending priorities framework today. Like other long-term planning documents, revisions may be brought forward in the future, but it is important that we have our marching orders in place so we can immediately work with departments to develop specific allocation recommendations. We want to thank all who contributed to the development of this framework, and that importantly included our Chair, Supervisor Sabatier, and Supervisor Pyska. Before we consider comments from the full board and the public, Supervisors Sabatier and Pyska, do you have anything further to add?
Yes. Thank you, Matthew. You'll note that you don't see broadband investments in there, and that was something that we originally had planned, but in the spring there was talk of broadband resources coming from other places. And so as we wait to see how all of those unfold, we feel really confident that those needs are going to be met through other sources. But again, everything is going to be fluid for a little bit. I wanted to highlight some of the examples in the second priority, and that is removing the barriers to childhood success and dignified aging. So some of the things that we're hoping to invest in is the Help Me Grow software and enhancing home visits for First 5, funding a mobile library vehicle, COVID-19 response support, assessment of all senior centers in Lake County to set them up for future success, and purchase and renovate Kelseyville Senior Center to facilitate broader use and enhance community appeal in the same manner as the Middletown facility, but in a smaller sense. During our meetings, it was noted that we had a void in service in the Kelseyville community and District 5 surrounding a library and senior services. So filling that void, we felt was a moral obligation brought into heightened focus through the lessons we've learned through the pandemic. So those were The priorities that I really felt were important is to focus on our children and our seniors and use this opportunity to set both of those groups that have really, as we move through the pandemic, we saw how those two groups really need further support in our community. That's it.
Thank you. I really like how we started our conversations here. We kind of threw everything at the board, everything that was kind of a vision of what we needed to get to where we want to be. And we started out with a very large list. It was actually a very difficult list to go through, and really appreciate the work that Mr. Rothstein has done to really narrow it down into a very legible document, because it was kind of all over the place to begin with. We had conversations with some different nonprofit agencies. First Five came to us and discussed what their needs were to see if that was possible for us to be able to support. And what I really see when I look at this document is government is not meant to build what our vision is. Government is meant to build a foundation for others to build what it is that we're going to need. We don't build businesses, things like that. We create the platform that promotes and is conducive to those types of things happening. And also providing a healthy environment where things are accessible in an equitable way is really important. I know that there was one that we discussed and is not on the list. And again, this list is kind of a moving document, a living document, in the sense that it's what we've put together for now, but as infrastructure funds get released, as broadband funds get released, maybe there's some things that need to be changed based on what our better understanding of what's happening with some of these bills. But I do know that there's a large conversation we did have with public health, which was the IFT problem. It's hard to know even what that would look like as far as a solution. That's still being reviewed. And it's hard to know what dollar amount would need to be placed on that. And so it is not on the list at the moment because we don't even know what that would look like at this moment in time.
Could you just clarify for the public
Oh,
that may
sorry.
not know IFT? We do, but
Yeah,
just
thank you for that.
clarification.
IFTs is interfacility transfers, so that when you go to Sutter or Adventist Health, it is the potential of having capacity to move you from one hospital outside of the county to an outside of the county hospital. And it's an issue that we're working on. There's a lot of conversations regarding that, but we don't want to put things that are completely unknown to us until those conversations can actually prop up with options and solutions, and possibly something could come back to this list, but at this moment it was unsure. I know that also the entirety of number one is very much in line with some of the conversations that are happening over at the EDTF, the Economic Development Task Force. Because the Economic Development Task Force is not a task force that has a budget, and therefore this would potentially be some of the funds that could be utilized to tackle our housing issues that we wish to discuss and figure out how to resolve. I appreciate the document that's before us, and I can't wait to see how it is that these items are going to slowly morph into more concrete items. Again, it's going to take time. Some of these we can get started on right away, which is why it's in front of us today. But a lot of these is going to be a lot more discussions and a lot more conversation with our state and federal partners to figure out how we're going to be able to use these funds to leverage their funds to be able to really accomplish our tasks. It's exciting. It's definitely a blueprint for what our future will be. And I'm looking forward to continuing on this mission to make sure that these things occur.
Mr. Chair, I should add that these funds need to be allocated approximately 2 years from today. And that sounds like a long ways off, but it's not. There's a lot of work to be done to figure out how to best use these funds. And so that in itself is a tall task. And that's why we're so happy to bring this plan to you now, because we need to get busy.
Yes, 2024 is our deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, I'm done. Is there anything further from CAO Hutchinson or Matthew Rothstein?
Just thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for all your work. Any comments or questions? Supervisor Scott?
Just want to show some appreciation for this. I know it must have been incredibly difficult to start with a list and get it down to this, because I know we all have our priorities and our passions that we work with. I'm just so thankful that you have added services for children under 5, because we know that if we can promote and do the work with our children, it's going to strengthen our families, and that just strengthens all of Lake County. So I'm excited to see that prioritized on this list.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, on some of the numbers provided to us, we've lost 21 daycares in the past year and a half through this pandemic, which was one of the conversations we had with First 5, is how do we deal with that? What's the need? What can we do? So it was a great conversation, and absolutely, if the 0 to 5s don't get any resources, the 6 to whatever age are going to be that much more difficult. Any further comments?
I appreciate especially the fact that it says applying lessons of this pandemic, and then right above it is what Supervisor Scott just brought up, and then also the senior centers for decades to come, because we had so many issues at times with utilizing them. So I really appreciate that effort into it.
Yeah, that was a big lesson that we learned. Our senior centers are not set up for success, and this is the opportunity that we need to take right now to make those changes, to make those improvements, to set them up for the next few decades. We know our senior population is going to continue to grow, and this is our opportunity to care for those people.
Obviously in support. I want to thank the committee and all that worked on it. Obviously, this is a big long-term vision task for us, and it's great to see the overall, 50,000-foot opportunities as we're moving forward. We know that other specific projects will come forward, but obviously our seniors, our elders, and our children are the most important assets we do have here, obviously, and infrastructure. We just had a big conversation on infrastructure, so I know that there are a lot of projects we're currently working on to go through this. Just make sure that we take advantage of all those opportunities. I know there's infrastructure dollars coming down in other directions, but it's great that we have this fallback opportunity. If things don't come out the way we want it, that we have an opportunity to have another conversation to keep projects moving forward that have been on the shelf for a while and bringing those to fruition. So appreciate all the conversations. This is a great starting document, and we'll make those decisions as it comes to the board. So thank you very much for all the hard work. It was great to accept the check, but to understand the path that we're on to spend these funds in the most valuable ways here in our community is very important. So thank you to the ad hoc committee and all that were involved.
And I do want to mention that last week we were here and you mentioned the ARPA funds, and I believe it was infrastructure related. It's very vague as far as what infrastructure, and so I think that's the better way to go. That way it's not super specific. Whatever comes first that we can go ahead and support, whether that's through feasibility study or construction design costs, I think it will make it easier by having such a nebulous infrastructure portion of this fund to be allocated for. So, and if there's nothing else, then let's go ahead and open up for the public. And we have...
Mr. Chair, I noticed that the sheriff came into the Zoom room. So you may want to see if he would like to speak before you open it up.
And I forgot to say something. Thank you, Supervisor Pyska, for reminding me. I'm sorry, CAO Hutchinson, I didn't hear what you had said.
I said that the sheriff had come into the Zoom room and may want to speak before you open up for public comment.
Let me go ahead and make my comment. I know that there was some request for, I'm not sure I have the right terminology, but...
premium pay.
Premium pay because of the pandemic. And I know that in the past, we have done those types of approvals for fire disasters or just disasters in general. And what we found is it wasn't easy to fairly apply it across the board so that those who truly should be able to access it should, while others who should not have accessed it still seem to have the ability to do so. And I think we ended up in a position that we had not necessarily planned to be in. We listened, we discussed it, And in those conversations, we were also in the midst of working on our salary increases that were approved back in September, I believe it was. It's all
They were
kinda-
effective November 1st. yes.
Correct. And so we decided that that is a long-term change, and that the premium pay is just a short-term change, and we wanted to make sure and always aim for the long-term impacts, and making it easier for us to be able to make that happen for the right people too. So I just wanted to add that that was part of the conversation. It was requested of us to discuss, and we definitely discussed it at length. And so before I do open it up for the public, I do want to call on Sheriff Martin in case he wanted to share some words.
I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Obviously, a lot of work went into the creation of this plan. I got to say, at first glance, I was a little bit disappointed to see that there was absolutely no emphasis on public safety in this plan. After listening to the conversation, it's clear that it's a living document, and hopefully some of these priorities that have been outlined here can be kind of tailored to fit some public safety needs. In response to the pandemic, our systems have been strained. We have some facilities that are quite aging. We're in the process of trying to acquire, I think we're in the final stages of the Armory building, and that is certainly going to require quite a bit of funding that hasn't been identified yet, other than a small bit from rural sheriffs. But I just want to express slightly disappointed from my standpoint that there is not more of an emphasis here on public safety. We had a lot of essential workers, and I'm not talking about the premium pay. I'm talking about some of the infrastructure here, and I see that the focus here on infrastructure is for sewer and water infrastructure. And not that that's not important, but some of our public safety facilities, as well as the rest of our community or county buildings, are also in need of some dire repair. So I just want to express my gratitude for the hard work, but point out that I'd like to see a little bit more emphasis on public safety at some point in the future.
And just want to remind you that part of the cannabis tax, 30%, has been allocated to law enforcement. If you have not submitted a proposal to the Cannabis Ad Hoc Committee, I would suggest that you do so. But also, if you have an idea of what exactly you are asking from the group for this ARPA funds, I would say submit it so that we can discuss it within the committee as well.
Sure, I submitted it. I responded when the request came out, so it's in the hands of the committee.
Thank you for your comment. All right, let's go ahead and open it up to the public. Betsy Kahn.
Thank you again. First of all, I would like to support Sheriff Martin's comments because I was disturbed to not see any suggestion in this document of some of the direly needed communication systems that we have seen time after time are very limited in their capacity during disasters. And we have for years been working with various agencies, including the sheriff and the Department of Social Services, to improve those capacities for those very important senior centers. I want to thank Supervisor Paiska for her comments. But I would also like to ask very, very urgently, would you please include some people in the definition of what you're going to do for those senior centers and those assessments, such as myself. I have been a volunteer for the senior centers here in Lake County for 17 years. I'm extremely familiar with the Area Agency on Aging, the Older Americans Act, the Department of Aging at the state level, the contracts, the needs of the seniors, and the volunteers. And the last thing I would like to add is when you're going to deal with the infrastructure projects, we have already identified some very high-risk areas due to the factor hydrants. In some cases, they don't even exist. In some cases, they're out of repair or they're no longer even repairable. And I think that's a crucial risk reduction need, and I would surely like to see that something is included in your plans for that funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Carlo Retz.
Hello, Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. My name is Carla Ritz. I'm the Executive Director for First Five of Lake County, and supervisors and staff members, everyone who is on that committee, we just want to collectively thank you, especially for number 2, removing barriers to childhood success and prioritizing early childhood, and that hugely important. For our work especially, our whole goal is that one day our success as a county will be measured by the well-being of our youngest children. And for us, that indicates that the people who are making decisions for our county recognize what's happening in those first 5 years and how absolutely critical it is to the success of our county in developing a workforce and in prioritizing the needs of parents with young children. So we are thrilled, and we hope that this passes and that Christmas will come early to early childhood and so many other areas that are included in the plan. And I just wanted to let you know that we are ready. You're talking about some of these things you want to get going right away. We're ready. So let us know, and we will bring our partners together, and we're ready to start working on any and all of the initiatives that we proposed for early childhood in our community and get those going as soon as possible. There were, as you mentioned, a lot of disruptions in childcare and preschool for our children. There were also a lot of babies born to families who had no baby showers. They had no family present because of COVID. There was just a lot of maternal mental health issues going on during COVID and still going on as people are incredibly isolated. So we are ready to get going. We hope this passes today and just offer our full support and thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see no further hands up in the Zoom room. Any hands up in the boardroom? And please come to the microphone.
John Moss, I want to repeat what Dr. Evans said. 33% of the people in Lake County are not vaccinated. I would expect this program to allow viewpoints from both sides in one story. And I know you think it's fear-mongering, Bruno, but I think that both sides of the story need to come out in order for truth to happen. Then we'll get a positive COVID response. Thank you.
Thank you. And that closes public comment and bringing it back to the board.
Any other comments?
Supervisor Pyska.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the Recovery and Revitalization Plan for Lake County and American Rescue Plan ARPA spending priority statement as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Supervisor Pyska, a second by Supervisor Simon. And roll call, please, Johanna.
Okay, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall?
Aye.
Supervisor Scott?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Was that an aye, a sixth aye?
Thank you very much, Johanna. And with that, we're going to start our lunch break right now, and we will return. I want to make sure you have enough time to get your lunch break as well, since you're doing a presentation. Does 1:30 work?
That's very generous. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and reconvene at 1:30, and we'll take lunch. Thank you.